This is Infants on Thrones. The philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the Quorum.
Smackdown.
Welcome to the games of the first Infant Olympiad. Today we bring the final round of one of the most anticipated events of these games to see who will be taking home the coveted gold medal in logical fallacies. The final contestant is Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, who's been a favorite for this event ever since his legendary Taffy Bowl address. But we shouldn't count this as in the bag yet, with a strong showing from Ken Ham's "If we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys" argument, and a shocking upset from your pretentious neighbor asserting that since Ridley Scott directed Prometheus, it is actually a good movie. It's safe to say that this competition is far from over. We go now to Holland's final presentation.
What is equally obvious is that the great conflict between good and evil, right and wrong, the moral and the immoral, conflict which the world's great faiths and devoted religious believers have historically tried to address, that is being intensified in our time and is affecting an ever wider segment of our culture. And let there be no doubt that the outcome of this conflict truly matters, not only in eternity, but in everyday life as well. Will and Ariel Durant put the issue squarely as they reflected on what they called the lessons of history. They wrote, "There is no significant example in history of any society successfully maintaining moral life without the aid of religion."
That was incredible, a truly impressive performance from Elder Holland. He started with that beautiful false dichotomy right from the get-go, followed by an appeal to emotion, and then he sticks the landing with that 3-for-1 no true Scotsman is ought and Texas sharpshooter fallacy rolled into one with the bit about the no significant non-religious societies. That very well may put him over the top as we go to the judges. And yes, that'll do it. With that statement, Elder Holland has clinched the gold. Let's go to him now for his reaction. Elder Holland, what was going through your mind as you
I'm not an idiot.
Well, of course not. Of course not. What does it feel like to be the Olympic champion?
I've read a couple of books and I've been to a pretty good school.
Okay, well...
And I'd like to think that your respect for me would be enough to know that this man doesn't seem like a dodo.
Okay, all right. I guess that's all that we have for that there. Congratulations on Elder Holland clinching yet another gold medal in logical fallacies. We now go to the infant's Olympic-sized smackdown of Elder Holland's entire address.
Okay. So, all right. Let's plunge in then. Okay, plunging. I always feel weird using that word. I probably shouldn't use the word as often as I do.
Plunging?
What's wrong with plunge?
I don't know. I feel like it's like moist. There's like some kind of, it has this deep down feeling to it where it's like, I don't know.
To plunge.
It's just from Latin plumbum.
To plumbum. Oh, of course, plumbum.
Mm-hmm. Plumbum, meaning lead.
Meaning to plunge the bum.
That's what plumbing is. Okay, yeah. So let's get started.
All right.
So to frame the conversation now, so this is a Smackdown of. So this is for what, Education Week or something? It was a devotional address.
I thought this was a smack up.
Hey, if we like it, it's a smack indeterminate.
Yeah, we should.
We're smacking, but we don't know which direction.
Because it's not like we've read this.
Right.
I have. Have you not? I listened to it on my drive up to Indianapolis.
You may have read it.
How was that?
Well, I was claiming that we hadn't read it.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're a lying secularist. You're not a secularist, though.
He's a lying Lochte.
Lion Lochte, right. Hey, we got a new word.
Okay, so this is for a BYU devotional for Education Week. And
spelled W-E-A-K.
Hi-oh.
Education Week.
With a question mark. Education Week. All right.
You can already tell this is going to be a good one.
This is a good.
It's going to be a good one.
This is A-list material.
Clint's on fire.
I'm on the jazz. You know the jazz, Hannibal.
All right, that's it. I'm starting. Okay, I'm going to start with the first couple paragraphs.
All right.
One of my
you're trying to shake your jowls right now, aren't you? You're like getting in the Holland voice.
One of my BYU professors of yesteryear, actually quite a few yesteryears, was pause for weak laughter.
It's like
once
once Captain Kirk, he was like in the movies. He's 80 years old and he keeps on talking about his days at the academy. I'm sorry.
Well, that's what he takes.
I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. Is that he's still young in the third movie? I'm just teasing you, John. I'm just teasing you. I know you don't think the movies are really Star Trek. It's just a joke. Go on, Jake.
Chris Pine is the only Captain Kirk I'll ever.
Right. I know what you're talking about. Okay, there you got it.
Yeah.
All right. Was Edward L. Hart, who wrote the text of a much-loved hymn in the church. The second verse of that hymn, Our Savior's Love, reads this way. The Spirit voice of goodness whispers to our hearts a better choice than evil's anguished cries. Loud may the sound. Is that the one? How that one goes? No, I think it goes like this.
Till all doth depart. I don't know. Sorry.
Loud may the sound of hope ring till all doubt departs.
I think that's a different song.
No? Okay, sorry. And we are bound to him by loving ties.
Okay.
All right, well, I guess we probably have to read the next paragraph. Oh, Glenn, you go.
Yeah, because that means nothing. Oh, thank you for giving me the omnibus word. Right. An omnibus word, familiar to us all, that summarizes these loving ties to our Heavenly Father, is religion. Scholars debate the etymology of that word, just as scholars and laymen alike debate almost everything about the subject of religion. But a widely accepted account of its origin suggests that our English word religion comes from the Latin word religare, meaning to tie, or more literally, to retie. In that root syllable of ligare, you can hear the echo of a word like ligature, which is what a doctor uses to sew us up if we have a wound. So, for our purpose today, religion is that which unites that which was separated Religion is that which unites what was separated or holds together that which might be torn apart. An obvious need for us, individually and collectively, given trials and tribulations we all experience here in mortality.
Okay, so right off the bat, why bring up the controversy about the interpretation of the word? Like, is it kind of a shoestring connection that he's making, so he has to acknowledge that it is, or I don't get.
Add Randy.
Oh shit!
Add Randy. He's here.
Randy.
He's here. Randy.
This is gonna be a good one.
Tell him we're almost done.
Randy.
Jay.
Hey, buddy.
What's up, man?
Randy. Hi, Randy.
Hey, John.
Hey.
Oh, wait. That was Glenn.
It was Glenn.
Yeah, I'm on my phone microphone, so I sound not as deep, bassful, sexy as I normally do. I just feel that way.
Yeah, maybe a listener will stop listening because you don't sound right.
Do you have a cold in your nose?
Yeah.
Aw.
Is it obvious?
Well, I figured it out.
Yeah. It took him about 10 seconds, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's but you can barely notice it. It's fine. It's fine.
Just mute the sniffles. Yeah. So we've just read the first paragraph or so, and Jake's asking the question, why bring up the controversy of the or the etymology of religion? Yeah, the word religion. I think I think maybe it's setting up a dichotomy that he's going to hammer home this whole talk, that there's secular people and there's religious people. I don't know if it does that or not, that there's these debates and everyone, like, the world is confused, but we really have the answers. We're the true religion and we know things. It might be hinting at that, but I think it's also true. And because the first thing I did when I read that is I went to try and find the etymology of religion, and I saw that there are different, it also says, like, oh, people mainly say that it's this, but it could be another thing, or it could be another thing, but this is what most people agree on. So I think when you listen to the talk that he gave, instead of just reading it here, he gets this introduction about what an educated person he is, and this is Education Week at BYU, and they talk about his master's and his doctorate from Yale. And so I think he's positioning himself as being very scholarly.
Okay,
so I think it's mainly that.
So it's like, oh, well, I'm a learned man. I am aware of the controversies.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't really know what the etymology of the word is, but people in the past have cited this as a possibility. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard this all the time when I'm grown up Mormon and living my life as an adult Mormon. People love to give talks where they take the etymology of a word,
yes,
and then try to draw profundity from it.
The at-one-ment.
Right.
At-one-ment.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. That's a perfect example.
Although that one has more meaning than this one. Because in this case, the word is one of the reasons why we don't understand the etymology of it is because the word is so old, that it's describing something that has nothing. The Roman use of the word religio here and religare doesn't have any relationship at all to, what's this guy's
ligature.
Name? No, it's the same. No, there's a related word there, but it doesn't have any relationship at all to Holland's use of the word religion in 21st century Utah. So in other words, what the Romans had a word for probably what Holland thinks of as religion, and their word was superstitio. But anyway, so this is a different.
I don't know if he'd like to use that one. I don't think he wants to break that one down.
I want to hear Stevie Wonder's version of the song, "Very Superstitio." That didn't quite land. Never mind.
We'll take it back.
Never mind. Yeah. So I think it's interesting. I've always found this interesting that in the field of academics that I studied, there was this idea, in cultural anthropology, that there's progress through time. That if you go backwards in time, there's basically we've gotten better. We've learned more. But I think there's also an opposite view of the world, that there used to be truth and it's deteriorated through time. So there's actually like a de-evolution of truth. And I think that Mormonism, because of its reliance on restoration as being such a key part of what Mormonism is, really leans more towards that de-evolution of progress in society. So there's this suggestion whenever you start a talk with the etymology, like, things used to mean this, and so if we go far enough back in time, we'll get closer to the truth and purity of what things are that have deteriorated through time. So I think that's a big part of why that's such a popular tactic.
And I mean, a restoration narrative, or some narrative that reaches back and finds some sort of truth in the past, kind of immediately lends itself credibility in that way, where it's like, this isn't a new thing, this is just an old thing that's come back. There's this feeling of ancientness where we're taking religion back from the
secularists.
It's the plain and precious truths that have been restored.
Yeah. But the weird thing is that he's saying is, it's weird for an LDS person, especially like an LDS apostle, to talk about how religion kind of, as a broad term, is a unifying concept when the basic, I mean, we send tens of thousands of young people out every year to go tell people to discard their religion to adopt ours. Isn't that
but no, because Hinckley talked about this in one of those famous interviews where he said something like, we think that they have good things, but we just want to add to it. You know, they've all got a little piece of it, but none of them are quite
and I think he's
all the way there.
And he, in his worldview here, he's also about to get to a point where that you're talking about something that's a hell of a lot worse than just having a wrong religion. So in other words, he's going to set up a worldview here where yes, he's got the only true religion, but the other religions are at least pale imitations of it. And as opposed to the rejection of it, irreligion, which is going to be essentially Satanism, right? So.
Right. This is the boogeyman. Well, let's get into it. It's good.
Imperialistic Satanism. I don't know how that works.
John, can you read the next one? The next paragraph?
Well, after... Oh, no. Are we right there? Where am I at? Okay, yeah. So this is a great way. What is equally obvious to what I just said... This was very... Yeah. Is
equally obvious to the contested assertion of the etymology of a certain term.
Yeah. But religio is from re ligare as opposed to re lego.
Did you guys break down the word omnibus? No?
Okay. Go do it. What is it?
No, I honestly don't know what it is. I just know what omni means. So it sounds like an all-encompassing or incredibly broad word.
I wish you would have done the etymology of omnibus.
Yeah. I was driving when I heard it.
Oh, I don't mean you. I mean Holland.
Oh, Holland, yeah. No, he just throws it out there to show he's smart.
He should do the etymology for every single word that he uses. That'd be awesome.
And the words that he's using to describe the etymology of the word.
Yes!
He's just meta. He'll just disappear.
Yeah, talk about
mind blown.
Break down the etymology of the word etymology.
Oh, yeah.
Comes from the Greek. Okay, here we go.
Thank you, Captain Know-It-All.
Cold blanket.
Well, no, I just know when it is Greek. I don't know Greek. So, okay, here we go. Go between... Where were we? Equally obvious? Okay. What is equally obvious is the great conflict between good and evil. I've said this is getting to Satanism already here, right? So
He's starting to paint with his black. He's starting to paint with his black and white brush right now.
Yeah, right and wrong, moral and immoral, conflict with the world's great faith and
conflict, right?
Oh.
Conflict, which the world's great faith have historically tried to address.
Conflict, which the world's great faiths and devoted religious believers have historically tried to address, is being intensified in our time and is affecting an ever wider segment of our culture. And let there be no doubt that the outcome of this conflict truly matters, not only in eternity, but actually here in everyday life, in real life as well.
Not in our fantasy world.
Will and Ariel Durant put the issue squarely as they have reflected on what they call, quote, the lessons of history. There is no significant example in history, they say, using a obvious logical fallacy, of any society successfully maintaining moral life without the aid of religion. So,
yeah, like that. I hate the way. Okay, first of all, I want to say about this whole talk, and I called Randy as I was driving up here to Indianapolis and said, you got to listen to this as you're driving, because if I was in the congregation listening to this devotional as a BYU student, 25 years ago, whenever it was I was there, I would have walked out of this thing feeling so pumped up, like so proud of being a Mormon, so proud of being someone who was religious and not secular, and things that he's saying like this, like there's no significant example in history that successfully maintained moral life without the age of religion. I would have been like, yeah, stick it to him. Yeah. But there's no evidence. Like, he doesn't cite any examples.
Well, the example,
it's not challenged.
The counter example here would be all of Western Europe since 1945 or whatever, right? So
I mean,
that's not significant, and that's not in history.
Yeah, that's the no true Scotsman fallacy.
But I mean, the reality is that the guy is like he's quoting a pop book from the '60s here.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. And all of the people that he's quoting, as he quotes people throughout this talk, give the appearance of just a lot of people agreeing with this worldview. So if you can find other people who agree, or at least their little quote that you're pulling out seems to agree with what you're saying, then it bolsters the argument. But it's not evidence. It's just finding other people that are saying something similar to what you're saying. And I that would have been enough for me back then, because it would have reinforced what I already thought. And yeah, that's awesome. But now I expect to see examples, and I expect to challenge those and see other things. And so it just frustrated me listening to this, that we didn't push pause and double click and really try to flesh this out. Is what they're saying really true?
Right.
Anyway.
There's no significant. And the thing is, I think this is what John was alluding to, but just because we can look, I mean, there was no successful
There's no society that has ever used airplanes before.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know.
Or antibiotics, or
exactly.
Or industrialized agriculture,
or slavery.
Not really an awareness of history.
Or slavery,
right.
No society has ever successfully existed without slavery, right? Exactly, which had been true up until 1820.
Well, and also, I think this gets to what Glenn was saying, where it's just by comparing to the past, then it automatically kind of legitimizes, because in Mormon's mind, the past was better than it is now. Since the world is devolving and diverting away from truth, then if you can make any sort of comparison to the past, if you're different than the past, then you're wrong.
But the golden, that golden age myth that you're talking about. So in other words, this idea that the golden age, where there was all the knowledge and universal knowledge of which now the world has fallen into decay. That's the pre-modern worldview. But that worldview is 500 years out of date. So yes, I agree with you that Mormons are still continuously hearkening back to that and trying to live in that. But we haven't been there. We haven't had awareness that in fact there's more knowledge now. And we have more information now than at any other time in all of history. There was not a time period when we had all the knowledge and now we've less. We actually have more.
Right, but when you go back and you read things that were written under that worldview 500 years ago, and it agrees with what you think now, you think that that's evidence. But it's not, because you're ignoring everything that happened since then. And so for this to be an example of Education Week at BYU. And to come from this lauded scholar who had all of these positions as a president of BYU and a degree from Yale and all this stuff, it is an example of Education Week. W-E-A-K, right?
He circled around to that after all that buildup.
Is Education Week, man. It's all Education Week.
Now we're pretty
sauce.
Now we're pretty well committed to making that the title of this podcast, right?
Yeah. Education Week.
Education Week sauce. Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to go. That's some A-list stuff.
I'm done.
All right.
I'm next.
Shot my wad.
Yeah.
If that is true, and surely we feel it is. Oh man, I can't laugh with the cough I have.
We feel like it's true, right?
Surely
we feel like it.
Then we should be genuinely concerned over the assertion that the single most distinguishing feature of modern life is the rise of secularism, with its attendant dismissal of, cynicism toward, or marked do you say marked or marked?
Marked.
Or marked disenchantment with religion.
Oh my God. Why couldn't you identify the modern era by human flight or
I don't know
the combustion engine or
it's secular
the single
this is
most
it's italicized.
Yeah, it is italicized.
That means that it's even more prominently stated. Why not underlined? It should be underlined twice.
It's all caps. Why not?
Why isn't it blinking?
How wonderfully prophetic our beloved Elder Neil A. Maxwell was. Clear back in 1978. And by the way, spoiler alert, this is so prophetic.
Writing only 18 years after the book he just quoted.
And only like 40 years ago. Clear back 40 years ago.
This is Elder Maxwell. We shall see in our time a maximum effort to establish irreligion as the state of religion.
No, the state religion.
Oh, as a state religion. Sorry, Jesus Christ.
Well, that's
to establish irreligion as the state religion. How is irreligion a religion?
Sorry.
Is a bald head a hair color? Yeah. Anyway, these secularists will use the carefully preserved freedoms of Western civilization to shrink freedom, even as they reject the value of our rich Judeo-Christian heritage. End quote. Heritage. End quote. Continuing on, he said, quote, "Your discipleship may see the time come when religious convictions are heavily discounted. This new irreligious imperialism will seek to disavow certain opinions because those opinions grow out of religious convictions."
Okay. So that last part there is the whole Donald Trump PC argument, right? So in other words, but the reality here is that ideas these opinions that people hold are not disallowed. They are rather contemptible. So in other words, everyone has the freedom to have opinions for which, when you have those opinions, you are viewed in contempt, with contempt.
And this is another example where I wish he would have backed up this statement with examples, but he doesn't. He just says, "Wow, don't we see this going on? Isn't this true? It's so true." But what's the evidence of it? Yeah, surely we feel that it is, but what is the evidence of it? Now, I will give him this. I kind of feel this way that he's describing. I actually do. If I hear that something is coming out of a religious opinion, then I kind of question it. I don't just naturally accept it. I'm skeptical of it, and I am, simply because that opinion grows out of religious convictions. So I want more. I do want more, but I don't see what the problem is with that, except that I'm not just accepting it on faith.
Well, the problem is you can't, in the public square, you can't just use the argument because my religion says so. Because
you're supposed to.
Right, because that's been true
according to
all
what
the way.
You're saying. I mean, according to your world force, but what he's saying is that you should be able to do that, and that should be as valid as an argument based off of empirical evidence or data or whatever, what have you.
Well,
but that's not been the case from the public square in North America all the way back to Roger Williams. So in other words, when the whole idea of it is that it was religious people who created the entire secular system, so that we are able to have because we don't all agree. So in other words, the fact is that there was sectarianism. Roger Williams was not didn't believe in the same kind of Puritanism that the people in Massachusetts believed in, the Pilgrims and all that kind of thing. In other words, because everybody has their own different views, you have to have the public square in order to be able to talk about what the society as a whole is doing, so that you don't just devolve immediately into warfare because you can't compromise at all.
Right.
So this is not new. This is the start of the whole thing.
But that tribalism that is part of religion tying people together, into these tribal groups of we agree on this and disagree with the other religions. That's not mentioned at all in this talk, because he's only promoting what he sees as the positive contributions of religion to today's society, and lamenting what the world would be without that. And that at some point, if the secularists take over, we're going to lose all that goodness and beauty. But he's not. What?
You're not being fair to him, because he does give token lip service that, religion isn't perfect, and we certainly don't have a monopoly,
Right.
But then he doesn't.
Oh, he says that at some point.
Yeah,
he does make that we don't have the monopoly on morality, but he contradicts that in other things that he says too.
Right.
But he's talking about the imperialism here, though. What he's implying and what he's saying here is that in fact that there's going to be a takeover of the public square and a complete
Right.
removal of the whole freedom of what the whole thing has been about in order to suppress whatever deviant belief systems or something like that within it. But that isn't the case at all.
So I want to make sure I understand what you said earlier, John. That secularism came about. John Williams, for one, was trying to find a way that different religious groups in the public square could gain consensus and compromise and agree on things outside of their religious differences.
Right, and so in other words, right from the very beginning, then in the colonies, because they originally Massachusetts and Plymouth, they founded colonies where they had religious intolerance. Right, they were trying to. Yeah. There was a state religion that was the the Puritans or the Pilgrims, depending on which of the colonies it was, and they would then, let's say, whip Quakers, or they would, expel from their colony Anne Hutchinson because she was, instead of studying, she was hearing the spirit in her heart or something like that. So they had to get rid of her. So in other words, there was no tolerance at all for that kind of thing. And so then in founding Rhode Island, Roger Williams, set up this sort of idea of this freedom of conscience, the secular place where you were able to, all of you, get together for the operations of the public sphere, and then individually you might be a Quaker and the other person may well be a Anglican, but you can still, say, get together for the commonwealth, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not, though, in the course of that, what he's saying here is that there's an imperialism that now that there are people who are inside of this who are wholly secular or who aren't involved in any organized religion, that those people now are going to wipe out everybody else, like communism or something like that is taking, like in the Soviet Union or something like that, it just beats everything down. It's like, I don't know, it's like there's nothing that would imply that at all. I don't even know where he's just saying that.
because it's not as if it's just that irreligious people are a larger segment of society, but it's not as if the tenets. Well, yeah, right. But it's not as if the basic tenets of what's supported by the Constitution or what's been understood as the interaction between people's religion and how they comport themselves in the public sphere has really been changed, because
largely
from the very roots to be able to take out, to be able to eliminate that sort of discrimination, you kind of needed people to kind of quote unquote check their religion at the door and make kind of more secular, kind of rational type arguments if you're in the public sphere. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I'm saying that just because, let's say, even if let's say the secular portion or the people who are non-adherents to any traditional organized religion became a majority within the society, it's not that they immediately are going to shut the synagogues down and say Jews can't go to synagogue anymore, or that Christians can't go to church anymore. In other words, that most people who are secular don't give a rat's ass what anybody's doing in terms of going to a church, and they're not going to. So he's calling it irreligious imperialism, where the people are going to, have their freedom of religion trounced. But as far as I don't know people, like a growing movement of let's say non-adherents who are attempting to impose irreligion on other people, which is what he's saying here by saying irreligious imperialism.
Well,
I think he would say things. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say what he means by irreligious imperialism is it reminds me of Jon Stewart's brilliant quote where he says, "My problem with the religious right is that their idea of religious freedom is getting every single fucking thing you want." And so what he's referring to with imperialism is gay marriage. And how he views how secularists have taken over the government to impose these religious fundamentalists to accept gay marriage. And
but
that's
they
all
don't
they're
have to accept it. That's the point.
Well, no, but
though
they
he
have
doesn't.
to.
I know, but
if you're a government employee and you're a Christian, like
then you have the right.
Davis.
You have the right at any given time to quit. So in other words, she does not have to accept it. She can quit at any time. No one is making her have that job.
No. You weren't listening to Jon Stewart. Getting every single fucking thing you want.
Yeah. So it's a phony, crap ball, stupid thing. In other words, nobody is making, this guy. What I can't remember any of these authorities' names. So Holland. No one is making Holland perform gay weddings in his temple, right? So he is totally free to discriminate all he wants in his religion.
But he has to live in a society where gay marriage is legal, and that is
because that's imperialism. That's what it has been
I'm
from
saying
the
that's
very
his
beginning.
argument.
Yeah, but his argument is total bullshit.
Yes,
Well,
we agree.
obviously.
We agree on that in the secular sphere. So I think what you're talking about, both of you, Randy and John, comes up later when Holland makes the claim that secularism is going to restrict freedom, and when it's actually extending freedom to groups that had previously been restricted. So if you're talking about gay marriage, I can't think of any examples where secularists are restricting freedom, and he doesn't provide any, to back up what he's saying. So yeah, it's just bullshit. But anyway, we'll get to that.
It's boogeyman bullshit is what he's doing.
And what you just said, John, about Roger Williams, that is education strong.
Education strong.
Education strong.
Fire bad.
Very good.
All right, I'm going to carry on. Next paragraph.
My goodness.
That forecast of turbulent religious weather issued nearly 40 years ago is steadily being fulfilled virtually every day somewhere in the world in the minimization of or open hostility toward religious practice, religious expression, and even in some cases the very idea of religious belief itself. Of course, there is often a counterclaim that while some in the contemporary world may be less committed to religion per se, nevertheless, many still consider themselves spiritual. But frankly, that palliative may not offer much in terms of collective moral influence in society if spirituality means only gazing at the stars or meditating on a mountaintop. Indeed,
nothing dismissive there. He's not being dismissive.
Right.
Like he is being very respectful of spiritual people.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
that's one of the outputs of religion. Like if you're a religious person, then you're really good and respectful and open to accepting other people.
Well, especially when he started this whole thing off at the very beginning with some sort of this etymological thing going back to Roman times. And what constituted religion in ancient Rome, and so the idea here that people today in the 21st century who are not part of any kind of traditional organized religion, but who consider themselves spiritual, who are doing all sorts of things like meditation or any other thing that's a spiritual practice, the fact that doesn't fall into the same like giant mega category that connects Holland to Cicero.
Right. Exactly. Like that way is wide enough to connect him to every pagan human sacrificing religion in the ancient world.
He's calling it, since it's a different word here, spiritual or whatever, then it's just a palliative.
So I want to just sneak peek ahead to his conclusion, because he says a couple of things that would have really, roused me up, like, let's be merciful, let's be forgiving, let's be just, and that's what religion is. And he says something like, it is in that spirit that we seek the good of our fellow men and women and work toward the earthly kingdom of God. Like we're looking for the good in all people, and we're merciful and forgiving and charitable and all this. And then I want, so we know that this is how he's going to end it. I want to be able to ask the question as we're going through: is he really being very charitable and merciful to spiritual people or to secularists, to try and understand where they're coming from? Or is he just demonizing them? And that's a rhetorical question, because the answer is he's just demonizing them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say hypocrite alert.
But why does he demonize them? Because these kinds of people are generally on the left of the political spectrum, and they're the most accepting and loving people you'll ever find. Are these like hippie type spiritual Buddhists, kind of pseudo Buddhists, but they're not on his team, and they actually exemplify all the things he talks about in his conclusion: acceptance and tolerance and loving and acceptance of everybody, as long as they're not doing harm.
Well, and that phrase, being on his team, I think is very clear when he goes on this spirituality stuff, because he says, indeed, many of our ancestors in generations past lived, breathed, walked, and talked in a world full of spirituality, but that clearly included a concern for the state of one's soul, an attempt to live a righteous life, some form of church attendance, and participation in that congregation's charitable service in the community. So his team, it's not even about belief. It's not about belief in God. It's not necessarily against atheists. They are against people that don't go to church. And it's so fucking crazy that a guy that, like, it's not crazy, but it's just so transparent to me that a man that is at the top of a power structure of an organized religion is demonizing anybody who's not part of an organized religion. Well, like, it's so clearly self-serving. Like,
and
it's so stupid.
It's ignorant, and it's dismissive, because it's insinuating that secularists, or in this case he's talking specifically about people who claim to be spiritual but not religious, that they don't attempt to live a righteous life, and they don't attempt to contribute charitable service to their community, that they don't have any morals, that they're not concerned about morality or being kind or being good. And that's just that's so easy to prove wrong if you take any time to really try to challenge those thoughts and ideas. But because they're just self-serving and they feel good and they sound good, and it's a really easy way to do an us versus them, we can demonize them that makes us look better in contrast. He's taken this lazy way out that is just it's so infuriating. It is weak, and it kept reminding me of like a magician that tells the audience, I have this one piece of rope and I'm going to tie it into a knot and cut it. Well, the whole time it was two pieces of rope. One's bigger, one's smaller, and he's lying to the audience, but because they believe it's one piece of rope, that he's just saying one piece of rope, that they believe it. You know what I'm saying? It's like sleight of hand, it's magician, it's illusion that he's putting up before this audience of people there for Education Week. I don't know, it's frustrating.
Well, and magicians are great at manipulating your attention, where you're focused.
Yeah. Yes.
So he is absolutely manipulating the audience to look in this one direction while he's doing a trick, outside their field of vision or what they're focusing on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
anyway.
And we can also mention here that all organized religions, from Buddhism till Hindu, Islam, they all include some form of church attendance, right?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Oh, yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
Some form of church attendance. Yes.
Somehow
giving, tithing, singing hymns out of our hymn book. Like, he's not really talking about.
They all have some kind of obeying of the prophet.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
They all have some form of home teaching.
Some form of temple attendance.
Yeah.
Right. It's freaking ridiculous. Okay, going on. Yes, in more modern times, individuals can certainly be spiritual in isolation, but we don't live in isolation. We live as families, friends, neighbors, and nations. That calls for ties that bind us together and bind us to the good. That is what religion does for our society, leading the way for other respected civic and charitable organizations that do the same.
Yeah, and the etymology of spiritual isn't to tie people or bind people. It's the etymology of religion that is. So we need religion to tie us together. The etymology of spiritual is just like about the individual masturbating. That's where it came from.
Right. Well, then Holland is a very spiritual person. So
for example, since we're all community, which I'm obviously in favor of community, right? So it's impossible to be spiritual, therefore to be religious. You can never be religious in isolation. That would be completely inconceivable how one could be. So for example, if you were to go off and live in the desert as, let's say, a monk, and what's the etymology of the word monk? Monakos. Mono. Oh, single. Isolated. Oh, wait, there is maybe a way throughout all of Christian history for a person to have isolated religion. The whole word religion, only as of the early modern times in Britain, the word religion, if you said I'm religious, it meant I am a monk. It didn't have the meaning that it has now. So,
but in those cases, the tie binds that single person to God.
But he just said isolation.
So
he's attacking spirituality where there's isolated that isn't part of going to church. He just said.
Right. Yeah, but he wasn't saying that religious people can't live in isolation. He was saying that people living in isolation are missing out on the ties and the benefits.
Families, friends, neighbors, nations.
Right.
He just said it.
He's saying we don't live. He's saying we don't live in isolation, so we can't just be spiritual. We have to be religious, because religious means tying and binding people together, and that's what we do.
No, it means tying people to God. It doesn't have to be with other people. In other words, a person can be a monk right now. Anybody can go off and you could just do a pilgrimage all over the world and just live all by yourself. I mean, that's a perfectly valid way to be spiritual.
No, but I think what Glenn is saying is if you plop yourself down in a suburb, according to Holland, you're not doing your duty unless you are religious. And his definition is your ass in a pew,
which means you go to a church. But it's preposterous historically in every way.
But
that's what I'm saying.
The thing I also want to acknowledge that that in the past, as he talks about religion and its importance in society, like there's no question that it has been an incredibly important influence in society historically. And like religious communities are like the only really strong, not the only, but the primary like strong communal network that isn't governmental in nature that people can kind of rely on when they go to a different place where they don't necessarily know anybody.
Except in Utah, where the structures are totally intertwined.
Right. But I mean, I guess when I say the only, I'm talking about American society. I don't know shit about other places because I have narrow experience in my life. Okay, sue me. But it's.
Well, you can go to Rotary, build a community there.
I know. There are communities and stuff. There are community. Lacrosse, for example, is a wonderful community.
That's my favorite.
Lacrosse players.
Having never played the game.
Right. Lacrosse. No, I mean, I want to acknowledge, and John.
And they've got a great choir. Lacrosse players have a fantastic, phenomenal choir.
Well, and John, your participation in Community of Christ in some ways is driven by the fact that, like, you want to be able to, affect a large number of people for good, and that the infrastructure of religion is already in place.
So I am perfect. I'm absolutely committed to community organizations, and specifically to a church that is busily involved in civic and charitable organizations. What I'm saying is a person can be absolutely a committed religious person, a spiritual person in isolation. They could go off and do that without being a member of the society. And I'm not denying that that's a completely valid, meaningful way to live life and to be spiritual and to connect to God, or however you want to define all of those kind of things. I think that that's a completely valid way to do it. I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, but I'm not saying that I have the only path. I'm saying this is a very wonderful path. I think it's a path that I'm committed to. But I mean, there's other paths too.
Well, and this whole thing is so weird because it's not. I mean, he's seeing it as a crisis of society, but in reality, it's a crisis of religion. Like,
organized
religion has failed to adapt. Yeah. Religion has failed to fulfill people's needs, and that's why people are leaving it. They're forcing people to believe, to support bigotry, to support things that they don't believe in, because we're part of a more, educated, cosmopolitan, diverse society now.
Yeah, I think the big problem with his overarching argument, how religion is so important to the public sphere, is that a lot of the John. I mean, would you agree that a large portion of people that are actively going to church regularly are part of a fundamentalist type religion? Mormons certainly fall into that category. So, what are the two fundamental problems with fundamentalists? Number one is dogmatism, which informs their worldview and their moral structure.
Can you define, like, dogmatism is a word that...
You have a set of, these are declarations that are true and they're infallible.
They're unyielding.
So it is said, so it is done. Right? But that's what dogma is.
But I'm going to argue, though, but the part of the situation, I mean, I would say that religion is essentially totally irrelevant to that portion of it. So there's a bunch of people that are fundamentalists, and they're fundamentalists whether they go to church or not. So in other words, there's all of the, like, they've done surveys, the people who are, just they're in the middle of politics. The people who are Trump supporters who haven't gone to college, it's not like they all go to church or something. In other words, that they are reacting in the same kind of low information way. They're where they are, regardless, and dogmatically, fundamentalistically, their worldview is fixed regardless of whether they're in a church or not. So I don't think that the church attendance is.
Well, I'm just going by Holland's argument, so
okay.
That's where I was
go ahead.
Coming from.
And
the second,
the way.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. You were in with the second one. Go ahead.
Okay, so the second problem with fundamentalist religion is they're highly tribal, and so when you have tribalism and dogmatism as kind of your founding, basically not your founding, your foundation.
Yeah.
Then that doesn't work in the public sphere because...
Well, especially combined in this case with clericalism. So in other words, where there is an authoritarian clergy, like in the LDS Church, where they have total control over the whole thing, then that's especially a mess, right? Because
but they only reinforce the dogma. So but they are, alive and contemporarily reinforcing that dogma and reassuring people that this is the only source that they can go to.
Right.
And that it just so when they get into the public sphere and they argue against gay marriage, it basically boils down to my prophet said that my God said that it's immoral and it will result in the breakdown of society. You know what I blame this on the breakdown of?
Society.
It's
my favorite quote from Mo.
Yeah. Oh shit! You just outed me as a Simpsons.
Oh, did you just quote the Simpsons? Oh my gosh!
I could have got
It's part of the infant contract. It's part of the contract.
That was awesome.
So it doesn't work in the public sphere because it's an argument from authority, and you can't use an argument from authority in the public sphere because your authority is your tribe's authority.
Right, but ultimately it doesn't matter and it's totally irrelevant because his tribe is completely free to do all of the stupid things that they want to do.
And
they just simply can't affect the society. In other words, so the society is the area that, let's say, Christians, religious people created with a secular sphere where we could all live together secularly, and then you have your personal convictions that you take back to your tribe in your own little thing, and nobody is worrying about that or making you change your views inside there. You can do all you want in there. I mean, you can't kill people. I mean, there's things, you can't sacrifice, you can't,
marry multiple wives.
Yeah, that's probably you probably get to do that fairly soon. So who knows?
Yeah, it reminds me of something that happened recently in the state of Illinois. What is that background noise? It's driving me crazy. Do you guys hear it?
I think it's.
Yeah.
Glenn, are you talking through like a headphone thing?
It's like it sounds like whiskers rubbing up against the mic.
Yes, it's a microphone on my shirt. I can't hear it, so I'll just hold it out so it doesn't rub against my shirt. I'm sorry, everyone. Everyone. Sorry.
So this quick
apologize
aside
to Holland.
I'm not sorry to him.
Yeah. This bloviating.
But he's not listening, so.
Well, his secretaries are.
No, they're not.
They're making a executive summary for him. Randy, what were you saying?
Okay,
Keep reading.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, we got a long way to go.
We really got a long way to go. Okay, Glenn, you're
it's
next.
me. Yeah. This is not to say that individual faith groups in their many different forms and with their various conflicting beliefs are all true and equally valuable. Obviously, they cannot be. Obviously.
Because we're the true church.
Right.
Right.
Nor does it say that institutional religions collectively, churches, if you will, have been an infallible solution.
There's no other kind of institutional religion.
Right.
Yeah.
It's got to be a church.
I mean, it's...
have been an infallible solutions to society's challenges. They clearly have not been. But if we speak of religious faith as among the highest and most noble impulses within us, then to say so-and-so is a religious person or that such and such a family lives their religion is intended as a... Wait. Okay, let me back up and do that again. But if we speak of religious faith as among the highest and most noble impulses within us, then to say that so-and-so is a religious person or that such and such a family lives their religion is intended as a compliment. Such an observation would, as a rule, imply that these people try to be an influence for good, try to live to a higher level of morality than they might otherwise have done, and have tried to help hold the socio-political fabric of their community together. Tribalism.
Yeah, sure.
But if we speak of religious faith, if we define the thing that I'm part of as the best thing ever, then
it's the best thing ever.
Then it's the best thing ever, and anyone doing it is the best.
Yeah.
Right. And
ever.
That excludes like the asshole, like totalitarian father who.
Well, we're not defining it that way, Randy.
Yeah, I know, but this is what happens.
No, but
we
religious person.
No,
it's a religious person.
Because if they're doing horrible things, they're not being true to their religion.
Yeah,
it's not the religion's fault, Randy, that they're bad apples.
But on the flip side, he's saying it's because of their religion that they're doing great things.
If these bad people were more religious, they would be better people. They would live higher morals if they were more religious.
Really? So you wouldn't call them a religion? So the umbrella of religion covers everybody trying to live it, except for the people that aren't doing good things.
Those people aren't following the religion, Jake. People who do bad things are violating the moral tenets of their religion.
But what if they're doing bad things based on the tenets of their religion?
That doesn't happen.
Oh, yeah, of course it doesn't happen.
When would something like that possibly happen?
I don't want to blame it all on 9/11, but it certainly didn't help.
I was just talking about like fathers that are psychologically abusive, and they invoke this priesthood authority and this head of the house culture to terrorize their family into obeying him no matter what.
Satan often mimics religion as a way to
by creating the counterfeit irreligion.
Yes, that's right.
All the
and making
people
them think that it's religion.
Swear
right.
the irreligious creed, and they have to say the creed.
But what
it's possible. It's possible for people to abuse religion and to go against what they know is true, but that's not true religion.
And often these people will rise up the ranks.
Who are you talking about?
Elder Bednar.
What are you talking about? Elder Bednar has been called of the Lord. Who are you to say that he has sin?
Yeah, and he also taps his wife on the head and says, "You're so silly."
And you drink alcohol.
He's a religious person. He lives his religion.
He does live his religion.
As a rule, that implies that he is being an influence for good.
He is an apostle of the Lord, Randy.
Did
anyone take their religion more seriously than the Lafferty brothers?
The Lord would not allow Elder Bednar to be an apostle of the Lord if he were a bad man.
Well, how do you argue with that logic?
Well, you don't. That's the point.
Yeah, you don't. You just accept it, hook, line, and sinker. All right, who's got the next paragraph?
You forgot to bear your testimony.
You didn't say I know.
However,
it's like Jeopardy. You have to.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
I still want to just say one more time here, though. Institutional religions collectively, churches, if you will, just at least just say synagogues and churches. Just throw the Jews a bone. I mean, come on.
Throw the Jews a bone.
And what is it in Islam? It's madras. Is that what their mosques are?
They go in mosques.
Mosques. Yeah.
Have you heard of mosques?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
You didn't know what a mosque was?
No, I was thinking of the word madras, and I think that's maybe that's that's another religion. I'm gonna Google it.
A madras is a lightweight cotton fabric, typically pattern, texture, or plaid design.
Shut up. I'm not asking for the etymology of it.
He wants the Muslim meaning. Let's go on, man.
How about Majadra?
Who's next?
Well, I think it's John. John, I think you're up.
What are we on? Okay.
Well, thank heaven.
Oh, I always want to. Well, thank heaven for that. Because the sociopathic talk, the socio-political fabric of a community wears a little thin. That's a pun. From time to time, locally, nationally, or internationally, and a glance at the evening news will tell us and a glance at the evening news tells us this is one of those times. My concern is that when it comes to binding up that fabric in our day, the quote ligatures,
that madras, the cotton fabric.
the madras.
The madras is the cotton fabric, yeah.
Well, you were so close, because that's so close to church.
I'm still looking it up. I'm like, I got that from somewhere. I can't find it anywhere. I was totally wrong.
Are not being looked into in quite the way they once were. My boyhood friend and distinguished legal scholar, Elder Bruce C. Hafen, frames it even more seriously than that. Quote, democracy's core values of civilized religion are now under siege, partly because of violent criminals and rapists who claim to have religious motives. He didn't say rapists. It's insane.
You were trumping it.
Yeah, the hyperbolic. Okay, partly because the well springs of stable social norms, once transmitted naturally by religion and marriage-based family, I presume opposite gender marriage-based family.
Heterosexual marriage.
Yeah.
It was
natural life. He didn't really make that clear. Are being polluted, and partly because the advocates of some causes today have marshaled enough political and financial capital to impose, by intimidation rather than by reason, their anti-religion strategy of might makes right. What in the hell is even? I don't even know what that is.
How are secularists using might to make right to crush the religious agenda?
I don't even know what that is, even where that even comes from.
Is it because Obama's an atheist and the Supreme Court justices are atheists and they're
Obama's a Christian?
No. That's not what they think. Well, they think he's either Muslim or an atheist. And that
he's either really religious or totally unreligious. It's one of the two.
It's one of the two.
But
if he's religious, it's
organized
the scary
religions,
one.
Churches, if you will. So I mean, come on,
Churches,
it's not madrasas.
And surely we feel that it is.
Isn't the plural of madras madrai?
Glenn's still looking up madras. That's why he's not saying anything right now.
What's the plural of tweed?
I'm in the penalty box for a little while. Actually, I put myself in the penalty box. I went for madras. I missed.
When the obvious answer was mosque.
Yeah,
it's true. There's some low-hanging fruit there.
All right, I'm owning it. Whatever. I'm gonna go back on mute.
See Gurdwaras.
Well, I'm saying for them, Obama is whatever he needs to be in the moment.
Yeah. Mastermind / dimwit who needs to read a teleprompter. One of the two.
Well, I think that what they're talking about is things like the Mozilla CEO that was pressured to step down because of.
Yeah, but that's a public company. So a public company,
right?
If a public company,
right, but
has a bigot, as their CEO, then there's all sorts of people who don't want to invest in that company, and so it's actually very bad for the company. That has nothing to do with the person's personal religious beliefs, which he's free to have. He can go off and do that.
I think that's what. But what he's talking about is religion's place in society. It's not religion's place in
but religion's place
government
in society
or in the public
is totally
in the public sphere. So
by the First Amendment.
And but they want it to be privileged. I mean, they don't want it to be protected. They want religion to be privileged, and he's making a case for that. He's saying religion is the most important moral force that's ever been, and if it's not privileged in the public sphere as a sacred if somebody is religious, then you can automatically assume that they're better than if you had said that they weren't religious. I mean, he just said that.
But he's that's totally wrong. It's totally anti-American. That's Iranian or something like that. In other words, that's what the mullahs say in Iran. What the point of the whole thing in all of the entire U.S. Constitution, everything like that, is that religion has a protected place. It's not this place of privilege where you put a mullah up and they get to run everything based on their thing. It has nothing to do with that. It has always been. It's been in a place where you have your beliefs. You don't have to. You can express them by your example. You're free to have them. He's free to have all of those beliefs. He can do, like I say, he can discriminate in his temple all day long, and he will, and that's fine.
Yeah, no one's trying to take that away.
And that's the way it's been all the way back since,
But the hand-wringing is about not having a privileged position in the public sphere where
but that's like
you could say anything under that umbrella and
trying to take and seize, like new powers and things like that they had, like again that the Ayatollahs of Iran have. They're kind of morality police and all that kind of thing, but it's not a thing that exists in the U.S. system.
No, but he's hearkening back to the 50s here when he says, when the wellspring of stable social norms, i.e.,
oppressing black people,
Christian norms, suppressing black people, suppressing homosexuals, were once transmitted naturally, meaning with impunity and with absolute social force, by religion and marriage-based family life are being polluted.
But he can still do it all day long.
No, but he wants to do it he wants it to broaden throughout, like it was in the 50s. Like nobody, like gay marriage was what? That wasn't even like a thing. And he's hearkening back to those good old days of the 50s. If only our economy could be in a place where half the world is in post-war reconstruction, and we have all the working factories, and obviously it was a boom. And so they conflate that with how how wonderful it was when men were men and women were women, and and the fags were in jail.
Oh, I think Jake's right when he's saying that he wants the privileged place of religion in society. That when you look at things like the Ten Commandments, monuments being taken off of government-owned property, or the no longer having prayer in school. The reason for that, like they would say, is it's secularism that's trying to erase religion from the public sphere. But what it's really doing is it's taking Christianity away from a privileged position and putting it at the same level as any other religion.
Right. That's what he's been reacting against this whole time. That's why he keeps saying churches. That's why he keeps saying everything has an element of church. He's only talking about like modern American Christianity. That's really that's as broad as his umbrella of religion goes. But he's going to go ahead and spread it over the entirety of human history for legitimacy. But in reality, he's only thinking about modern American Christianity.
Which, by the way,
and by not providing any examples, he's making it, he's like being sneaky because he doesn't give any examples for what he's talking about. So if you accused him of that, he would say, oh no, because later on I quote from a rabbi, or I do other things like that. Fine, but what are the examples of secularism putting religion away? What are the examples of that?
Right.
He doesn't give any.
And the part of the situation here, though, is that there's all kinds of crazy ironies. So in other words, if everybody were able to take to run their own religion and be able to have their own theocracy everywhere, Mormons would be, since they're so hated by evangelical Christians, they would also find their religion suppressed in Mississippi and other kind of places where those religions would be the dominant theocratic force. But in terms of these examples that people have like tried to make, and he's not even saying any of them, like you say, he's just making these broad sweeping things. I hear this all the time though about like prayer in school and things like that. So there's so people have these broad complaints that let's say here in Canada that people can't that kids supposedly can't pray in school anymore, but that Muslim children have release time so they can all go and have like the daily, the 5 times a day prayer kind of thing. And they're like, how is it that Canada is promoting Muslim prayers in schools and you're not allowed to have Christians pray in schools? Christian kids can pray in schools anytime they want. You can have release time for that anytime you want. In the same exact way that in Utah, kids get release time to go for seminary. The difference is whether the principal gets up in front of the school and makes all the kids pray in a common Christian prayer based on Baptist or whatever the dominant local Protestant or Christian, whatever religion that happens to be in that place. So
exactly,
the prayer is totally allowed in schools everywhere. Everybody can pray in school all day long, all they want to. That's not allowed. It's what the difference is whether or not it's imposed. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't get it.
Not getting every fucking thing.
Or and I would say imposed or privileged. Like having one religion privileged above another.
Right, exactly.
Right. So and what he's reacting... Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm just saying those kids can all go and pray. That's what I just feel like people don't get it. So in other words, if you wanted to, you could create if you wanted to create prayer circles for your children that are in your church, you can petition very easily, and they will work with you. The schools will work with you. They'll give you the time and the place and everything like that, and the kids voluntarily are going to have to go if you want them to go. But in other words, it's what kids want to do, and whatever you do, and you can have prayer in school all you want. It's just a matter of the principal is not going to get up and read a prayer or promote a prayer or have a privileged position for a particular religion's prayer.
Well, okay. I thought of. Sorry, go ahead, Randy. We've been interrupting you too much.
No. You go ahead.
Well, I thought of an example where religious freedom is actually being chipped away at, and this is something that's going on in France. But have you seen this where they've banned burkinis or whatever? There's a certain type of swimsuit or something like that. That's like has the hijab or the burqa. But as part of the swimsuit, and
what happened was
France is doing this thing where they're saying Muslims, please be discreet about the way that you practice your religion or something. I mean, I think that there are some ways that the pendulum is swinging too far that way.
But the French legal tradition and constitutional tradition is completely different from Anglo-American. So it doesn't even...
And that's... Right, and that's not what he's talking about here. I mean, it's clear that the way he keeps reframing everything into a Christian context, he's talking about Christianity not being in a privileged position in American society anymore. He's not really talking about some of these other global type of issues.
He's talking about America, but he never explicitly says that, because he always says around the world.
And he's saying religion, but he means Protestant Christianity or whatever, so.
But all right, let's carry on. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Randy, I think you're next.
Are we on There Are Many Colliding? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are many colliding social and cultural forces in our day that contribute to this anti-religious condition, which I am not going to address in these remarks. It was italicized. You
had to say it that way.
Yeah, I had no choice. But I do wish to make the very general observation that part of this shift away from respect for traditional religious beliefs and even the right to express those religious beliefs has come because of a conspicuous shift toward greater and greater preoccupation with the existential circumstances of this world and less concern for, or even belief in, the circumstances, truths, and requirements of the next.
I think this is explicitly anti-science and anti-climate change. I think that, specifically that's what he's getting at here. Is people worrying about,
how is climate change a religious belief? When did that become a thing?
But, I mean, what he's saying is the greater and greater preoccupation with existential circumstances of this world. Is he talking about, what is he talking about? He's talking about, the age of the Earth? Is he talking about, physics that determine the age of the universe? Is he talking about climate change? I don't get what he's talking about here.
Greater and greater preoccupation with existential circumstances of this world. Yeah, what the fuck is he talking about? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. John, are you there? Is this me and you?
I guess it's just me and you.
All right.
It's the Jake and Randy Show.
It's the Jake and Randy Show.
All right. Yeah.
John, are you there? Okay. So, but I don't know what he's talking about. This is a fascinating paragraph because I don't know idea what the fuck he's talking about. First of all, let's deconstruct this, because at the beginning, he says he had a chance to talk. He's like, there are colliding social and cultural forces, but I'm not going to talk about those. I'm just going to make a general observation that can never be refuted because it's so general. Shift away.
And you fill in the blank, listener.
And that's because he won't talk about the actual specifics. I think Glenn's onto something when he says it's not about talking about specific types of things. Is it like a dog whistle where you kind of cast a wide net, but everybody kind of knows what you're talking about? What the fuck is he talking about, though?
A dog whistle, like Second Amendment people might be able to do something about it.
Right. Jeez, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I think it has to be climate change because he's talking about a shift away from respect for traditional religious beliefs, and we all know that the religious right, for some reason, it's part of one of their religious tenets, is that climate change isn't real, or at least anthropomorphic climate change.
I guess
is not real.
I didn't even hear climate change until Jake said it, so I don't know.
Well, okay, can you define what existential crises of this world that are distracting?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
What are these existential circumstances of this world that are distracting from?
I guess I was just focusing on, in other words, again, the fact that his, he's got a religion which is just insanely focused on this idea of afterlife. It's just afterlife. Everything's about afterlife. One of the whole motives of the whole religion is redeem the dead, which is just strangely freakish for almost anybody who's out, not in that particular religion. And so I guess I just kind of feel like he's like, why isn't everybody focused on afterlife? Isn't afterlife the only thing there is? And they're all worried about this world, as if there was an existential crisis that we have in this world, when in fact everything's about afterlife, because that's his worldview. So I guess
that's the longest that you're going to have to. That's where all the consequences are going to be in the afterlife. Because somebody said so, and we trust them, and we believe it, and we have faith in that.
Right, but
and we can use that to scare you.
But the dichotomy that he's drawing is between the religious and the irreligious. So it's not. I don't think that he's really trying to highlight sectarian differences between different sects of Christianity or
I feel like
religious
he
groups.
Doesn't know any differences. In other words, the fact that he just assumes that all of the religions are like his or something like that. And just because he keeps on talking about traditional religions, churches, if you will. Churches that are focused on redeeming the dead. Whatever. I mean, it's just there's a lot of religions, that are not concerned about afterlife, including, for example, the entire Old Testament of the Bible. There's no concern about afterlife.
Name me any Protestant that believes in his version of the circumstances, truths, and requirements of the next world.
Right.
Well, what is this? Glenn, I want to hear your thoughts. What is this idea of this has become because this shift away from religion has come because of a conspicuous shift toward greater and greater preoccupation with the existential circumstances of this world and less concern for the circumstances, truths, and requirements of the next.
He's right. I think he's right.
Well, but what
Elaborate.
What is he talking about? Elaborate.
He's saying that people who leave religion are focusing much more on their lives today in this world than they are in an afterlife. They just don't care about an afterlife anymore.
That's not existential. He's talking about existential, not mundane day-to-day survival. What are the existential preoccupations?
Where are we in the text?
All right, so
have we gotten to Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs? Has he given that one?
No,
not yet.
We don't get anywhere. There are many colliding social and cultural.
Okay,
I'm not going to address them though, and that's why we don't know what the hell he's talking about, because I'm not going to address them.
Jake, you're planning on going to bed.
But I think he's saying that the shift away from respect, and I'm glad he used that word respect because it's such a bullshit word, but the respecting traditional beliefs has come because of the conspicuous, so it's obvious shift toward greater and greater preoccupation. And maybe he's saying existential as I don't really understand that word, but existential circumstances of this world, and less the concern or even the belief in the circumstances, truths, and requirements of the next. Maybe he's doing a Randy here, and he's just using a big word to sound really.
You're so funny. Madra?
Like Madras. Yes.
Like Madra. Yeah.
Well,
Madras.
But
Dude, you're in no
again,
position to be.
We should point out that.
Okay, he pulled a Glenn. Fine. He pulled a Glenn. I'm going to go back into the penalty box.
That the heart of the paragraph, though, here is, again, shift away from respect, like Glenn pointed out, the respect for traditional religious beliefs, and then he doubles down on his bullshit here, which is, and even the right to express those beliefs. Everyone has the right to express those beliefs. There is no shift away from that.
Did Ted Cruz ever stop expressing his religious beliefs?
Yeah, at least in the U.S., which, let's be honest, that's all he's talking about.
Right, he's only talking about the U.S. We're talking about Anglo-American. Yeah, of course. There's you express religious beliefs in some countries, and you are going to get arrested by the Iranian thought police or whatever. Right,
but he's not talking about that. He's not really talking about the rest of the world. He's only talking about modern American. Right. Judeo-Christian.
So he wants to be able to stand up and say, I am an anti-gay bigot, and he wants people to say, boy, I really respect him. But he has the right to say that. He has the right to say that. No one is ever going to stop him from saying it. That's the point. He doesn't understand that. It's a right to express it.
Well, maybe he does understand it, but he wants this message that you guys who I'm talking to, you members of the church that are here in this auditorium, are under attack from people that might even be your relatives or your friends. So if you hear them discounting the afterlife and you see them moving towards secularism, just know that they're part of what Elder Maxwell prophesied 40 whole years ago and what everybody's been talking about. They're out to get you. And you guys are good and they're bad. And in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Yeah, well, tell me what religious freedoms since 1978 have been taken away.
It doesn't matter.
I know.
It doesn't matter if it's true or not. No, because he's just trying to tell everybody, you guys are good. Stay good. You're awesome. Stay awesome. Don't become secular. Don't stop believing. Don't discount your faith. That's all he's saying.
Yeah, I know.
And it's just bullshit.
I think that he actually believes his talking points. So in other words, even though he probably does. Saying them. So in other words, he's saying it because he believes these talking points, but he's wrong. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
I'm sure that he believes that he's under attack because now that the internet's out there, when he says a shitty thing like this, people are going to say, hey, that was shitty. And now he's like, oh, I can't believe that I'm under attack.
He's confusing having his freedoms attacked with being criticized for stupid shit that he says without backing it up.
Right, he has the right to say all these things.
He thinks that he's a disciple, or no, not a disciple, an apostle of Jesus Christ, and that he actually is in a privileged position that he knows all this stuff is true. He doesn't even have to rely on belief or faith. He knows it. He's not going to go as far as say, I've seen Jesus and I've talked to him, but he's going to let everybody think that.
Oh, yeah, and he drops the apostolic at the very end.
He absolutely does.
Let's go to the next paragraph for Jake's sake.
All right. Who is it?
Mine too. I'm on Eastern Time Zone right now too, Randy, and I have to leave at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
so
but you're traveling. Come on.
All right. Next paragraph. I'll start. Call it secularism or modernity or the technological age or existentialism on steroids. Whatever you want to call it. Ha ha ha. Pause for education. Weak laughter.
Weak.
Whatever you want to call such an approach to life, we do know a thing or two about it. Most importantly, we know that it cannot answer the yearning questions of the soul, nor is it substantial enough to sustain us in times of moral crises. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, formerly Chief Rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregation of the British Commonwealth for 22 years, a man who I admire very much, has written, what the secularists forget is that Homo sapiens are meaning-seeking animals.
With truth-seeking brains.
And if there is one thing the great institutions of the modern world do not do, it is to provide meaning.
Yeah, right. That's such bullshit.
What a fucking...
Well, what the fuck does meaning mean? Like...
It means you believe in my worldview.
Well, like, I've had this question. I mean, I've had conversations with multiple theists about this type of thing where they're like, well, it doesn't, science doesn't give life any meaning. I'm like, what? Like, if meaning is a subjective construct, then, like, how? What?
No, the capital M meaning that this rabbi and what Holland is invoking here is that everything is controlled by a puppet master, and everything, if your life is not eternal, it doesn't have meaning. That was the thing I was confronted with first when I first came out as an atheist, and I came out to believing friends. Was, well, man, I would just kill myself, or I would just do whatever I wanted because life doesn't really mean anything. And I utterly reject that. Even if a child lives a miserable life of 6 years, but that whole life is filled with suffering and misery, does the 6 years of suffering not mean anything because it's not eternal? So, if it's not eternal,
but then it
doesn't mean anything.
No, I agree with you that they have the wrong idea of what meaning is. But you're saying is that you have found meaning in that life, right?
Yeah, but I call it small m meaning. But maybe I shouldn't.
No, it's
real meaning.
Yeah,
because all they're saying,
it's just to differentiate. Really.
They have the meaning that they're talking about is this simplistic answer meaning. Oh, it's just a test. whatever. In other words, I mean, it's just dumb meaning. In other words, as opposed to if you actually, this actual struggle with meaning, leading the meaningful life. That's what the whole of origin of philosophy even is. That's what Socrates is talking about trying to do, right?
And it's totally self-referential. It's totally circular when they're saying meaning is fulfilling all of the needs that we've told you that we fulfill. It's like, well, meaning is having an eternal family and going to the temple and having an afterlife that's exactly like the one that we described to you. That's what meaning is. Like, it's totally circular, so that meaning is like they create the problem that they solve. It's like a glove. They're like, oh, look how perfectly this glove fits your hand. Why, God must have made this glove.
Or water in a puddle going, look how perfectly formed this hole is for me to be this puddle right now.
Right, exactly. I couldn't be any other puddle in this hole right now.
If it wasn't perfectly designed the way it is right now.
Right. So, I don't know. It's some freaking dumb. But, Glenn, you're next.
All right. Give me just a minute to find it. Is this We're So Fortunate?
Yes.
We're so fortunate and grateful that modern technology gives us unprecedented personal freedom, access to virtually unlimited knowledge, and communication capability beyond anything ever known in this world's history. But neither technology nor its worthy parent...
Who provided that? Was it religion?
But I'm also going to say, I don't know how fortunate he thinks that they are that they have the internet.
Yeah, he probably is like...
I think they came to it quite reluctantly. In other words,
yeah. Well, don't put too much into his straw man lauding of technology, because he's going to get to it. But neither technology nor its worthy parent science, nice try, can give us much moral guidance as to how to use that freedom, where to benefit from that knowledge, or what the best purpose for our communication should be. It has principally been the world's great faiths, religion, those ligatures to the divine we have been speaking of, that do that speak to the collective good of society, offer us a code of conduct and moral compass for living, help us exult in profound human love, and strengthen us against profound human loss. If we lose consideration of these deeper elements of our moral or our mortal existence, divine elements, if you will, we lose much, some would say most, of that which has value in this life. The legendary German sociologist Max Weber once described such a loss of religious principle in society as being stuck in an iron cage of disbelief, end quote. Noting even in his day the shift towards a more luxurious but less value-laden society, which is kind of like the whole grumpy old man, in my day. But anyway, a society that was giving away its priceless spiritual and religious roots, he wrote, not summer's bloom lies ahead of us, but rather a polar night of icy darkness. And that was in 1904.
Yeah, no shit. He does make a valid point in one sense, that science alone cannot determine morality. At some point, to create a moral framework, you have to make value judgments that aren't based on science. Right. You just have to make value judgments. But you should allow science to inform your moral framework.
Right.
And that's something he doesn't do.
You're right. And I think he's also right when he talks about religion as being the delivery system for those kinds of value judgments and morals, and that religion teaches lessons. It has been a very influential packaging for common sense and wisdom, but that doesn't mean that it's the sole source, or any kind of source of those things. It's just it's man-made delivery and teaching from one generation to another. And one of the things that he's going to do in the future of this talk, he pauses and plays music that's like, look at this beautiful music that was inspired by religious people. You know what? It's people that made that. You can marvel and appreciate and admire all of the beauty in the world. That doesn't mean that it's all because of religion. Even if religion is what they were aiming for, religion is what was inspiring them. It's Dumbo's black feather, which is great. It helped Dumbo fly, fantastic. But don't start confusing it for an actual mystical, magical thing. Anyway, I'm going back on mute.
That's a
going back to
future
State
thing.
Bucks. Yeah.
It's hard to know what you're
Bugs
talking.
me. I know. No. We'll get to it. I just worked up. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, he completely discredits the Enlightenment. I love it when the religious right, especially pseudo historians like Barton, get up and give fake quotes about how the founding fathers were evangelical fundamentalist Christians, and really they were all children of the Enlightenment, and a lot of them were religious, but it was these ideas that that we cherish today, like civil rights and equality and women's rights. All these things come from Enlightenment principles that, if you look at your history, religious factions have dug their heels in every step of the way, citing religious reasons all the way up until today. And I'm not trying to make a straw man about how religion hasn't played any influence. Of course they've played an influence. Martin Luther King was a devout Christian. Medgar Evers was a devout Christian. Harriet Tubman was a devout Christian. I'm going to out myself. I don't know any of the names of the leading feminists, but I'm sure
There's some Christians in there somewhere.
I'm sure there's some Christians in there that got
Lucretia, Marx, all those. There must have been.
The 19th Amendment was passed.
Somebody was on that little dollar, whatever it was. We never. She must have been a Christian or something.
So it's not like I'm saying that religion has been this enemy 100% the whole way. There's been religious people, Christians, that have helped further these causes using Christian principles.
I would argue that, in fact, Christians created secular society. In other words, this grew out of the West, right? The reason why we have, the society we have is out of the, Western civilization, which was Christendom.
Out of the West, but it was people that were sick and tired of the Christian dogma, and they got a hold of some Greek documents, and it opened their minds.
Well,
it had nothing.
It's anti-clericalism at that point. Was what I would argue that it is, but it isn't anti-religion in any sense. Those Greeks are not anti-religious either. It's misread.
They're not Christian, but they're not Christian either.
No, they're not
and
Christians.
Heavily influential on the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment doesn't happen without all those Greek documents coming into the hands of these Christians in the Middle Ages.
Right, but the Christians in the Middle Ages were also. Anyway, we're always influenced by all the Greek thought. So Christianity, all of Western civilization, has constantly been informed by Western philosophy the whole time. So through the early time periods, because most of Aristotle was lost, it was heavily Platonist, and then later it became more Aristotelian as of the Central Middle Ages when Aristotle started to get recovered. And then more recently in the Enlightenment, like you say, people started to imagine that Aristotle and Socrates and Plato were secularists, but they're not. Secularism is a thing that evolves out of the Middle Ages. I think it occurs because when the Germanic kingdoms take over the Roman Empire, the kings themselves are in charge of let's say the militaristic, the civic society. And the Roman officials are still in charge of the church, right? What ends up becoming the church, but all of those terms, like diocese, that's simply a Roman administrative term. So it's this fact that Western civilization is a hybrid between the sort of militaristic knight society let's say the secular portion that ends up being the warriors, and then the people that are in charge of knowledge and philosophy and all that kind of thing, religion, those are the Romans. And so because it's this hybrid, that's why we have a separation. So it evolves out of that,
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that Holland's definition of religion is Judeo-Christian values.
His definition is like Mormonism.
Well, yeah, okay. Protestantism. Well, Protestantism. I think
he might be like
Protestants.
aware of some Baptists or somebody.
Right. but he's acting like it's Christianity that created this wonderful government, and when really, like, he wouldn't consider the Greeks paganism religion,
Right.
and that's
Because he's ignorant of Christianity. He's ignorant of Western civilization. He's ignorant of.
But he's got a PhD in philosophy from Yale.
Ugh, sad.
No, I think it was in English. Wasn't it in English?
The guy introduced
American studies, not philosophy. American studies.
I could have swore the guy said philosophy.
But you would be wrong. It's American studies.
Well, that makes a lot more sense, Glenn.
Yeah.
Well, he quotes Max Weber, so what could he?
And he minored in Madras.
In cotton fabric.
Well, now we're going to get to talking a paragraph of all of the luminaries of Satan worship.
Right. Wait, who is this? You, John?
Sure. But of course, not everyone agrees that religion does or should play such an essential role in civilized society. Recently, the gloves have come off in the intellectual street fighting being waged under the banner of, quote, the new atheists, unquote. Figures like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, and the late Christopher Hitchens are among the stars in what is, for me, a dim firmament. These men
and got some great laughs from the congregation, that one, the audience.
He just introduced the crowd to some possible authors of books they might read.
Yeah.
While reminding us that the Old Testament is written at a time when people thought that the world was flat and that there's a hemispheric firmament that is separating our dry land from the waters of the cosmos above, and that's when the firmament is opened that the waters come down and rain on us. Anyway, a dim firmament.
I actually figured that part out and really believed, going back to what we talked about earlier, that there was this pure knowledge earlier. I'm like, maybe the edge of space really is water, and we're just like this big bubble. There was a time as a teenager that I thought, yes, I figured this is one of the deep mysteries, Jake, that I figured out that the waters were separated from the waters in the creation story. I'm like, yes, right. Awesome.
You are a man of faith. You're like the the lock of lost.
I was
here.
I was a teenager of faith. Yes.
Right. He was an adolescent of faith.
Yes.
Adolescent.
And now I'm just adolescent.
Faith. Okay. Right. These men are free to express their beliefs. Oh, how wonderful that they're still free to, that we haven't actually suppressed their right to express their beliefs since they represent your religion. Okay. Or, in their case, disbeliefs as any other, but we feel about them what one...
We feel.
Yeah. We, all of us here in this room, feel
speaking for the crowd
about them what one Oxford Don said about a colleague, quote, on the surface he's profound, but deep down he's pretty superficial.
Oh, see, and when I heard him say that was the point where I'm like, flip that, because all of these claims that he's making, he's not supporting with anything. You can't dig into what he's saying without seeing how shallow it is.
Right. Well, we were talking about this at the beginning, the argument of meaningful life, and yet the whole meaning that they're expressing is like an answer that can be written on the back of a 3x5 card, or that you can do in like 4 missionary discussions or something, right? So in other words, there's no meaning. It's superficial.
Well, and there's no argument either. He's using a cute rhetorical device to poison the well and posing it as if it's an argument.
But the thing is, he's doing exactly the same thing as the people that he's saying are suppressing his right to express his beliefs. It's so fucking hypocritical, because he's doing exactly what they did, what the type of thing that they've done, which is, deconstruct and criticize religion, and he sees that as an existential threat to society, and yet he's completely fine doing that to the people on the other side of the argument.
Yeah, except I think saying he's deconstructing it is giving him way too much credit.
Right, but
It's weak.
But the critic weak.
But I think that Jake has made a very good point.
Yeah, it is hypocritical.
I wish he'd quote Oliver Sacks instead of Rabbi Sacks.
Well, here's Rabbi Sacks. Surely Rabbi Sacks says, it is mind-boggling to think that a group of bright secular thinkers in the 21st century really believe that they can show, for example, that the universe is more than 6,000 years old.
Oh my God!
What the hell?
Wait, no. He says if they can show, for example.
Oh, I'm sorry. If they can show. Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you. Okay, if they can show, that, for example, that the universe is more than 6,000 years old, or that a rainbow can be explained other than as a sign of God's covenant after the flood, that somehow such stunning assertions quote, will bring all of humanity's religious beliefs tumbling down like a house of cards, and we are then left with a serene world of rational non-believers, unquote, serene, except when they whistle nervously past the local graveyard.
Oh, fuck you.
A much harsher assessment of this moment comes from theologian David Bentley Hart, who writes, quote, atheism that consists entirely in vacuous arguments afloat on oceans of historical ignorance, made turbulent by storms of strident self-righteousness, is as contemptible as any other form of dreary fundamentalism. What? That is a weird paragraph. That was a lot of notes.
It is, and it's so shitty of him to quote somebody, like saying this about atheists, as if that gives it any credence at all, when it's really just this is his opinion. He's like, I didn't say it. I was saying that somebody else said it. Yeah, you're saying it. You're putting in this talk, and you're not providing any substance.
Surely.
Yeah, surely. We believe, we think, we feel.
Surely you feel that this is so.
Yeah, and who are the groups that really walk nervously by the graveyard? Is it the ones that have come to accept the reality of death, or is it the ones that are worried about what's going to happen when they die and they wake up and they're dead, and now what happens?
Mortality is something that people naturally struggle with. All humans struggle with that, regardless of where they're at. So this isn't something that like when I know people who are members of churches that they are just they're all serene and everything like that. I mean, it's very unusual for that to be the case. People react to loss. It's a natural part of the human condition,
And I hate this paragraph so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with what you just said, John. I didn't want to step on the toes.
You could say you hated the paragraph. It's a horrible paragraph.
But I hated this. The thing I hated most about it is when he talks about this. These seculars think that if they can show that the universe is more than 6,000 years old, or a rainbow can be explained other than the sign of God's covenant, then all of our religion comes tumbling down. He says that as if that's some sort of crisis of the secularists trying to destroy society. When really, in reality, it's a crisis of the fundamentalists that he's supposedly criticizing here. Like, he's calling atheists fundamentalists for pointing out the logical fallacies and idiocy of a lot of the doctrines or tenets of the religion of the actual religious fundamentalists that they force their believers to – they force their adherents to believe. Like, it's not a crisis of society. It's a crisis of religion. He doesn't realize that, though. He won't ever really think, oh, shit, maybe I'm the one that caused this. Maybe me being so dogmatic is maybe I'm the one causing people to have such a brittle faith that learning that the earth is more than 6,000 years old, which is fucking obvious, is going to destroy their faith. Like, how is that the fault of the person that originally believed that? It's the fault of the person that taught them that was the case.
Yeah. Well, this is the worst paragraph in the whole thing to me. First of all, he's saying that because – I mean, he's not saying this, but I'm summarizing. Because I've deluded myself in a palliative narrative towards death, I am therefore better than you. And then I don't I don't even understand this first phrase in this quote: atheism that consists entirely in what a statement. He doesn't offer an argument and then deconstruct it. He just like puts, like Tom says, he just takes his arm and just sweeps the table clean.
Right. Clears the desk.
Clears the desk. It's everything is entirely vacuous, afloat on oceans of historical ignorance. What the fuck is he talking about?
Hey,
Well, I think that when they say that, they may be referring to, like, I've seen this with a lot of, quote unquote internet atheists or new atheists or whatever. There's a tendency to be like, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a government that accepted atheism? That would be just a rational, wonderful government. Well, Soviet communism was an explicitly atheistic.
No, I mean, ideology is
government.
a form of religion. I mean, you can take ideology and use all the same tools of religion, like. But
a lot of people
which is why
make
I argue that every person in the entire planet is equally religious. So in other words, everybody is religious. It's just a matter of whether or not you have a traditional organized religion, like whatever the name of this general authority is. I can't remember his stupid name.
It's Holland. It's like the country Holland.
Yeah, like a Holland. Okay.
And all this, I can reduce this entire shitty paragraph into 2 words.
Awesome.
Neener. It's the neener tactic. Oh yeah, you think we're stupid? Well, you're the one that's swam in centuries of ignorance. Oh yeah, you think we're fundamentalists? You're the fundamentalist.
Right.
Well, not only that,
Simpsons reference.
he's calling them self-righteous. I mean,
Yeah,
my
right,
God, he's
right.
got the
You guys are the ones that you're the same as we are. You just are on the opposite side of it. And then everybody's like smugly going, yeah, except they're wrong and we're right. Yeah. Yeah. They suck and we're awesome.
Yep.
And is he
We're
pretending?
great.
Is he pretending that Mormonism doesn't? One of their tenets of fundamentalist, and I'm talking about Salt Lake City Mormonism, is not believing that the flood was real.
No, but what he's saying, what he's allowing for here is that there are people, we can accept that the earth is older than 6,000 years, and we can say that there are just 6 creative periods, but that doesn't mean just because of that thing that you don't understand metaphoric scriptural language doesn't mean that you should throw out the baby with the bathwater, that you should just discount everything. That's just stupid. That's just ignorant. It's like why would anybody crawl over or under whatever the Book of Mormon to get out of the, he's just like, he thinks that there's so much evidence for God and so much evidence for religion and so much evidence to justify his faith that people are just rejecting it willy-nilly.
But he's so insanely caught up in the particulars of his own faith or his own organized religion that he's a part of that, I mean, again, this idea, Hinduism, like Apu says, there are 800 billion of us or whatever, right? 800 million of us or whatever. In other words,
Simpsons reference.
So the universe, they're not suggesting in any way that the universe is just 6,000 years old in Hinduism, So it doesn't even have anything to do with religion again. I mean, it's his particular thing, or rather fundamentalist Baptism or whatever, Baptists who are making that argument or whatever it is. It's he's got such a weird dichotomy here because he's only arguing for his own particulars within the United States, of fundamentalist right-wing religions versus but he's couching it all in these universal terms, like all of religion, as opposed to whatever, the incarnation of Satan, the late Christopher Hitchens.
It's like he claims religious people that aren't fundamentalists when it's convenient for him, and then he throws them under the bus when he wants to throw them under the bus to make a different point. Yep. He's a dick.
Churches, if you will. All right, I think I'm next. We are grateful that a large segment of the human population, of course. So now we're going to cast a
now we're
wide
back to them again.
Now we're back to all of human.
Believes that the world is understands where rainbows come from.
Right.
It's God. With the whole damn. We're not going to kill you anymore in a flood, but probably fire. Ugh, whatever. That's where rainbows. Hindus know
A large segment of the human population does have some form of religious belief, and in that sense, we have not yet seen a polar night of icy darkness envelop us.
What's that reference to? There's a footnote.
It's because he was talking about earlier. That was way back in 1904. Not summer blooms light ahead of us, but rather a night of polar icy darkness.
It's like the kids' book, The Polar Express, or whatever. That's what he's probably talking about.
Except it's Satanism that waits us, not Santa Claus. Satan Claus.
Well, there's no mention of Jesus in that whole movie, so it's clearly of Satan.
But no one can say that we are not seeing some glaciers on the move. He loves to introduce a metaphor and then kind of tease it later in the paragraph. He's like, look at that, I'm harkening back. No one can say we're not seeing some glaciers on the move. Charles Taylor, in his book with the descriptive title A Secular Age, describes the cold dimming of socio-religious light in this way. The shift of our time, he says, has been from a society in which it was virtually impossible not to believe in God, to one in which faith, even for the staunchest believer, is only one human possibility among many others.
Oh, let's go back to the good old days.
In the 21st century, he writes, belief in God is no longer axiomatic. Indeed, in some quarters, it is not even a convenient option. It is an embattled option. So that's what he's...
Like Sweden?
He is complaining about he's not complaining about the lack of, loss of rights. It's loss of privilege. He's complaining about the loss of privilege for American conservative Christianity.
But his implication is that it's an embattled option governmentally. In other words, that you are actually being oppressed by a state, and that is not true. It is not an embattled option. In other words, everyone has that right. There is the rights. No one's rights are being threatened in any way.
In America.
What really surprises me is that he doesn't invoke either Daniel or the Lion's Den, because that's what that's the world he's describing. That we want to pray to God and we have to do it in secret because they're telling us we can't. But our belief in God is being embattled.
Right.
And if we try to publicly express our faith, we will end up in
a podcast,
a lion's den.
Yeah,
in a lion's den, getting
podcast.
We will get smacked down by infants. They will smack us down. That's how embattled our belief in God
government power.
Yeah.
That is more or less like the same thing as Auschwitz, as far as I can tell.
And he thinks that us smacking him down would be an example. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Religion under attack. No, you've got a degree from Yale. Use it. Use the training for critical thinking and presenting a message that you learned from Yale. This is
I think you're being really cruel to Yale here. For Yale.
They should revoke his degrees. I mean, come on. This is horrible scholarship. But he's
not scholarship.
Pretending.
He's not a scholar.
Well, he's got a doctor degree in American studies, and he's going to go on to
from Yale.
He was a president of a university, dude. He was a president of BYU.
Yeah, but it's not a real. I mean, it's not a scholarly. People that are scholars within Mormonism aren't real scholars. I mean, a lot of them aren't. Being president of BYU is not a scholarly position. It's an ecclesiastical position.
Yeah, it's a stepping stone to general authority.
Right, but
the requirement is that you are have a certain ecclesiastical position.
But people that worship Elder Holland worship him as a scholar. He's gone to some pretty good schools. He's read some pretty good books. That's how he positions himself. And he's gonna go on later and talk about all of these authors and invoke his English degree in English literature and stuff to make himself sound really well read and worldly and all this crap. But he's not. I mean, anyway. I'm just tired of him.
We're only halfway through.
I know.
I know.
Okay. All right. Who reads next?
Who just read?
I just read. You read, but Faith has.
I'm getting down to it. I haven't been following along. What is it, Jake?
But faith has almost always.
But faith has almost always been an embattled option. Has almost always been won and kept at a price. Indeed, many who have walked away.
What the name of hell is he talking about?
He's talking about Daniel and the lion's den. I already told you.
I know, but
Indeed.
but we were talking about religion in the second faith and
John.
Everybody up until.
Can we just agree that he's full of shit? Like, we've already said that this is bullshit, and he's not. Like, he's making these broad assertions that don't have any substance to them.
We can say up until 1500, 99% of all people everywhere, would be considered, would have been considered religious. I think my point is they're all religious now, but in their own way, even if it's not an organized religion. But up until at least 1500, 100%, 99% of all people are religious overtly.
Okay, John, Lehi was persecuted for his religion, for being a prophet. He was kicked out of Jerusalem.
But at that point, now when he gets to this point, he doesn't say it, but at this point he's really talking about, okay, so now we're talking about the one true church.
Right, exactly.
The faith in the one true church. So now he's actually talking about what he's been talking about the whole fucking time, which is Mormonism.
Right.
This whole time he's been talking about Mormonism.
But the point is that the person who was burning Daniel in the story, which is not a history, but anyway, was religious. In other words, that guy believed in the story, the book of the story. He believes in the idol Bel, and he worships the dragon, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, that person is religious. It's not that faith is an embattled option. It's that you didn't like the particular Daniel faith or whatever Daniel's faith was.
Right. But it's what Jake's absolutely right. It's true faith. So it's wink faith in this case. It's So all right. Indeed, many who have walked away from faith have found the price higher than they intended to pay, like the man who tore down the fence surrounding his new property only to learn that his next-door neighbor kept a pack of particularly vicious Rottweilers, and that got a big laugh.
What the hell?
Well, he's saying if you leave the boundaries of the safety of the church, there's Rottweilers waiting for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So don't leave the boundary of the safety of the church.
Don't get out of the boat.
But guess what, Holland? Even before the fence was turned down, the Rottweilers were there. But the religious don't know that they're Rottweilers. They think that it's the devil or some boogeyman or something like that. And when you tear down the fence and you see what it really is, that doesn't mean the Rottweilers are going to immediately attack you. You know what they are. Maybe they'll be your friends. Maybe you can feed them. Maybe you can tame them. It's just anyway. I just not done with him.
You're too much in his analogy here. You've accepted too much.
David Brooks hinted at this, but put it much too mildly when he wrote in his New York Times column, "Take away the rich social fabric that religion has always been, and what you are left with are people who are uncertain about who they really are." Okay?
Okay.
My point about too mildly is that a rich social fabric, important as that is, says absolutely nothing about the moral state of one's soul, redemption from physical death, overcoming spiritual alienation from God, the perpetuation of marriage and the family unit into eternity, and so forth. If anyone is considering such issues in a postmodern world.
Fucking exactly. He's only talking about fucking Mormonism.
Right.
He's not talking
Nobody is talking about the perpetuation of marriage and the family unit into eternity. I mean,
it's just incredible to me
how many times do they talk about that in Hinduism? Again, as we mentioned it.
Well, it's because he's only talking about this whole time. He's only been talking about Mormonism. Yeah. He says broader religion, but he really only is talking about Mormonism.
And there's only two evil threats out there that he's even referenced, and one is criticism as a somehow an impediment to his freedom, and the other one's gay marriage.
The Rottweilers,
and it's gay marriage.
The Rottweilers will be fabulous.
Yeah, you're like this, you're a gay kid raised in a Mormon family, and you finally leave the church, and the Rottweilers end up. I'm not going to get back into that metaphor.
And the thing,
explain to us about the Rottweilers again, Glenn.
No.
Again, he does this thing where he says, when he talks about take away the rich social fabric that religion has been, and you're left with people who are uncertain about who they really are. He sees that not as a failing of religion to accommodate people's needs in an evolving and changing society, but as a failing of the stupid pieces of shit that have fallen by the wayside, and fuck them, they're going to get eaten by dogs. Like there's no moment of self-reflection.
Right.
Well,
it's just so stupid.
And he's also acting like certainty is a virtue. So, like, a Mormon knows who they are. They're a child of God.
Yeah.
They are a priesthood holder. They know it. It doesn't matter whether or not it's real or can be, backed up with anything. But if they know it, they are better than somebody who has an existential crisis and leaves the church and now has to kind of reconstruct the world around them. That doesn't make them better. It just makes them, well, from my standpoint, it makes them more deluded. But
it makes them less able to deal with unpredictable things within their worldview. So in other words, they have a worldview that is simplistic and is unable to predict realistic or reality circumstances, and is unable to process them when they happen. So it's actually a very serious weakness.
And a great example is what is a Mormon parent to do when one of their kids turns out gay?
Right.
They have no tools in which to deal with that in a healthy way. They can't process it. Yeah.
Right. Because their worldview hasn't been able to predict it, because their worldview is flawed and unable to handle things that, like, let's say, in other words, flawed in the sense that it can't predict what happens in reality, and also they aren't able to process those things when they happen. So.
All right, I'm going to take the next paragraph.
Yeah, go for it.
I think Glenn's asleep.
That's all right.
In fact, religion has been the principal influence, not the only one, he's so kind, but the principal one, that has kept Western social, political, and cultural life moral to the extent these have been moral. And I shudder at how immoral life might have been then and now without that influence. Granted, religion has no monopoly on moral action, but centuries of religious belief, including institutional church or synagogue or mosque going.
Oh, look at that!
Now we actually threw those
Brown brothers,
those bones. Thank you. I was waiting for those.
Have clearly been preeminent in shaping our notions of right and wrong, except that they come up with different answers of what's right and wrong, and they call each other infidels. Journalist Will Salatin puts it candidly. Religion is the vehicle through which most folks learn and practice morality. Again,
this is like that same thing where you said at the very beginning, in terms of a logical fallacy, a society has been able to do it without organized religion. So just because, for example, let's say the religion is the vehicle through which most folks learn and practice morality, that may well be a perfectly reasonable statement by William Salatin, but that doesn't mean that doesn't imply anything at all.
No, that's called the is-ought fallacy, because you're just this this white Christian growing up in 1950s Indiana.
Right.
You learned your moral compass through religion. That doesn't mean that's the way it ought to be for everyone throughout all time.
Right.
Yeah. And there's no responsibility on the world of religion to adapt to a changing society. Anything that deviates from religion and the reinforcement of the power structure on the top of which he sits is a failure of the person.
I'm not willing to accept this as it, even though he keeps using the word religion, and he's finally thrown the bones to the Jews and Muslims. Right. That he's talking about anything other than his own, corporation. Anyway,
that's like what Glenn said earlier. It's like him being able to point to his talk. Hey, I mentioned the Jews and the Muslims.
Yeah.
When the whole time it's a dog whistle to one true church people.
Yeah. All right. I think it's – where are we at now?
I am stressing such points.
Okay. I am stressing such points this morning because I have my eye on that future condition about which Elder Maxwell warned. A time when, if we are not careful, we may find religion at the margins of society rather than at the center of it, where religious beliefs and all the good works those beliefs have generated may be tolerated privately but not admitted, or at least certainly not encouraged publicly. The cloud that the prophet Elijah saw in the distance, no larger than a man's hand, is that kind of cloud on the political horizon today. So we speak of it by way of warning, remembering the storm into which Elijah's small cloud developed.
I think he sees secularism as the metaphor in I think it's the book of Daniel, of the small stone cut without hands that rolls down the hill and gains momentum and gains size until it destroys religion.
Yeah, but in that case, it's more like cancer than the. It's like a cancer.
It's a cancer that's stage 1 that he's
right
imagining stage 4.
Yeah,
but
I don't think there's anything wrong with this paragraph. In other words, he's phrased this one carefully without talking about this being. He usually has like an aside here where he says, or if we may say, the destruction of all rights.
Right.
In other words, in this case, he is actually talking about like a actual social trends, right? Which is to say,
right.
If the religion, let's say organized religion of the type that he is specifically thinking about was at, regardless of where civic society was secular, but in the United States this entire time, but religion might have, let's say, been at the center of it, and it may now, in the future, that he's anticipating be at the total margins of the society. That's different from than taking an appositional statement in the middle of it and saying, and totally, forbidden to even be practiced.
Yeah, but he's also implying that this is a totally negative thing.
Yeah,
and
that's an opinion, and
it has happened in places, lots of places in Western Europe, where religion has been marginalized, and they've been fine.
Yeah,
but he never mentions that.
Right, people are totally able to, specifically Christianity anyway. In other words, like you say, in France, which has a different, like legal national system and everything like that, there have been, sort of right-wing reactions to Islam, but it's not like they're viciously attacking Christian practice.
No, I actually, I think I listened to a long time ago, years ago, Mormon Story Voices from a family that left the church, but they were in Scandinavia somewhere, either Sweden, probably Sweden, and the kids talked about how being Mormon in Sweden, you were kind of a freak.
Right.
But that's wholly different than the government forbidding you
from being
able to practice your religion.
There's nothing wrong with it doing that.
But he's not just talking about government. He's talking about society and like peer pressure and social norms changing and things like that. So I loved your analogy, Randy, of the twist on Daniel, the stone cut out without any hands. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's secularism, not Mormonism.
Not Mormonism to destroy secularism.
Because
that
Mormonism is
awesome.
not growing anymore, so it's not going to be that rock.
That's my second favorite thing that you've ever said after the whole like cancer and having to cut around the cancer to get rid of it comment. That was brilliant.
But
anyway.
I thought your favorite was, don't you care about all those steamed vaginas?
Well, that's my favorite for a different reason. That was funny. That just tickled me. So I'm going to read the next paragraph.
Okay.
Because this is Holland putting on his prophetic mantle. But whatever the trouble along the way, I am absolutely certain how this all turns out.
Oh, good.
I know the prophecies and the promises given to the faithful, and I know our collective religious heritage, the Western world's traditional religious beliefs, varied as they are remarkably strong and resilient. The evidence of that religious heritage is all around us. I'm not going to tell you any of them, but, it is, including at great universities, or at least it once was, and fortunately still is at BYU. What the fuck? Just to remind us how rich the ambiance of religion is in Western culture, and because this is Education Week, may I mention just a few of the greatly religiously influenced non-LDS pieces of literature that I met while pursuing my education on this campus 50 years ago, provincial and dated as my list is, I do so stressing how barren our lives would be had there not been the freedom for writers, artists, and musicians to embrace and express religious values or discuss religious issues.
He cannot even imagine somebody living a happy life outside the Mormon Church. It's beyond his imagination.
Can we skip this, because he's going to give all
he's just a big list of there's literature, and all literature was written by religious people. We know that.
Oh no. He includes Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Oh my God.
Mark Twain, really? You're going to Mark Twain?
You don't get Mark Twain, dude. You don't get him.
Wow, that's insane.
He says it's religious in its own right. Yeah, whatever. So he's taking all of these things and saying, oh, this is a result of religion, or because they had the freedom to talk about religion, the freedom. This is such a red herring.
Everyone will always continue to have the freedom to talk about religion.
Yeah,
in the United
authors
States.
will still, unless Trump becomes president. But anyway,
it's not going to.
Where did freedom of speech come from? Was that found in the Bible?
Yes. Yes.
He keeps talking about freedom of speech, and that's something from the Enlightenment.
Yeah, people who weren't free to speak were stoned.
Right.
They stoned them.
Well, do you think the Puritans in the 1600s were about free speech?
He's not actually
religious.
He's not talking about. I mean, he doesn't really actually truly believe in free speech. What he believes in is privileged speech for his religious worldview.
And his allies, because he's a little bit realistic enough to understand that at least the Baptist allies that he has are going to be ruling other states. Right?
But what he's also doing right here is this red herring move. It's this sleight of hand thing that we talked about earlier from the magician, where he's like, let me show you all of these brilliant works of art in literature. And then, it says down here there's this audio-visual presentation where they play like Handel's Messiah. And it's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. Right. And you know that people are sitting there listening to it and going, wow, all of this was inspired because of their devotion to God. And yes,
right,
fine,
but
great.
all of that, what we need to understand is none of that has anything to do with fundamentalism
or religious freedom.
Right, and so all of those things, I actually will make the argument that it is actually a problem for people who want to define themselves as being totally secular, to being to have come up with this fundamentalist Christian definition of atheism and theism in order to then cut themselves off from all of the past, all of their roots, all of those things. In other words, but he is twisting this.
He's definitely
In other
twisting
words,
it
by making him, like what he is, like he is trying to claim this entire inheritance. Right. Yes. This is not him, and it's not about him, and it's not about his little crapball particulars that he is talking about. The Messiah has nothing to do, the Handel's Messiah or Beethoven, the Ode to Joy. These don't have anything to do with Mormonism.
Do you remember the Michael Coe interview that John DeLynn did on Mormon Stories, where he's talking about Book of Mormon archaeology and evidence, and one of the things Michael Coe was so angry at Mormon scholars and the Book of Mormon for suggesting that all of these magnificent works of art and culture and the temples and all these achievements were a result of white, pure, and delightsome Christians, right. And that totally strips away the actual people who built this and erases them. That's how I felt when I was listening to him talk about Handel and saying that this is because of God. This is because of religion. It's actually that this is because of humans. This is because of people. This is the beauty of man-made creations that a human secularist will appreciate just as much as anybody who's religious will, and will find the beauty in it and exult in the beauty of it, and maybe even a little bit more, because it's directed towards the people themselves who are creating this gorgeous art, instead of saying, oh, it's because the Spirit of God is working through them, or the muses have kissed them, or whatever it is. It's just well, the thing that sticks out in my mind in this is that, sure, religion and religious people and religious text have inspired wonderful literature, music, and art and philosophy. But you can appreciate and exalt that, or laud that, without trashing secularists. It's not one or the other. It's not.
And in that exact same way, frankly, the Restoration tradition, literalistically taken, like Holland has, actually trashes it all. Because what he really says, what the belief really is that all of these people, all of Handel, I mean, who's Handel but an apostate? In other words, he wasn't singing about the real Messiah. He's singing about an apostate Messiah. Because yeah, exactly. Because the truth was taken off the earth after 79 AD, and now it's only came back in 1829. Whereas you could, as a secularist, totally embrace this heritage and inheritance without dismissing it as being, like apostate and not true.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite modern pop culture songs is Leonard Cohen's "Hallelujah." Yeah, and it's obviously popular throughout all of American culture because it's been covered by about 1 million different singers. Yeah. And it has a reference to David in the Bible. Well, I mean, of course it has a reference to David in the Bible. That's part of Leonard Cohen's upbringing as a Jew. But that doesn't speak at all to the truthfulness and the importance of religion in controlling everything in society, which is what he's arguing for, being at the center of society. Leonard Cohen is anything but religious. And that's in the Holland.
But I'll tell you, we actually sang that, and I attended a Sunrise ecumenical, all the liberal Christian pastors on Easter this year, and we sang that. So it's a wonderful.
It's a gorgeous song.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Lame. Weak.
Where are we now?
We're not. We don't need to read anymore because the rest is like him bearing his. Are we going to read his testimony at the end?
I think we should probably read like the last 2 paragraphs or something. But there is a good portion that we can skip because it's pretty redundant and it's just equally frustrating to everything that we've read up to this point.
Okay.
All right.
So I think that Holland has smacked us down. That's how I feel right now. Like I feel frustrated and defeated, that this is the kind of message that's permeating, and all these hundreds and I don't know thousands, how many people attended this thing that walk out of there going, yes, we agree, and it's just so But what can I do? I can't do anything about that.
I know, because you can imagine yourself as a believer.
I would have been one of them.
Yeah, I would have been totally inspired by this because my epistemology back then was an appeal to authority. I remember when somebody would bring up some obscure Mormon doctrine point, and I hadn't heard it, and I'd be, oh, come on, where'd you hear that? Who's your source? And if they said, like, Bruce R. McConkie, I'd go, okay, that checks out.
Yeah, right.
But that's how you think. Yeah. And he gives argument after argument of authority from himself and then from people that agree with him.
Oxford
and it just
Dons.
It's right in the wheelhouse of the epistemology that you've been taught your whole life. So
the thing is about this whole thing is so freaking hypocritical because the opening paragraph he talked about religion as these ligaments that bind people together, and then he's using the categorization of religious or non-religious or spiritual but not religious to be divisive, to say, look at these pieces of shit over here that don't believe in religion. Look how they're ruining society. Look how they're doing all these terrible things. And the thing is, he would take examples of if Christopher Hitchens got up in front of a crowd this size and gave the whatever the inverse of this talk would be, trashing religious people the way that he's trashed people that aren't religious. And it was covered by a bunch of news media outlets and had 10 articles written about it the way that he has. He would call that an infringement of his rights. He would call that as the end of society. He would call that the very problem that he's preaching against. It's just so hypocritical where he's doing exactly the same thing. He's doing exactly the opposite of what he purports the benefits of religion are, which is bringing people together.
I don't know though, Jake, because I think that metaphor of religion tying things together is pretty consistent, and I don't think you're right. He's excluding the secularists, but they're not tying themselves to the religious. They have separated themselves. They have untied themselves from it, and so by citing all of these authors and artists and venturing out to non-Mormon, non-LDS sources, he's trying to show these, build on common beliefs, show these common threads as a way to support this idea that see how religion ties us all together, and the secularists, they want to destroy that. So I don't know that that's the hypocritical part. Well, but he doesn't. What he's saying.
He throws a bone to fellow religionists of different colors and varieties, but he never wants. I mean, what makes this so tribal and so damaging to me is that he doesn't throw a single bone, not one fucking single bone, to any secularists that are doing a lot of good out there.
Yeah, not one.
Right.
If he'd have done a little bit of lip service to secularists, I admit that there are some secular people that are, working for Greenpeace or the Peace Corps or Doctors Without Borders. I admit that there are some secular people that do good out there, but he doesn't even do that. The closest
one
brush.
The closest that he comes to that is when he says that religion doesn't have they haven't cornered the market on morality, or he says something like that. That's the closest bone that he throws to him. But you're right, he doesn't, because that would go against his thesis. And his thesis is that religion ties people together. These are the ties that bind us to each other and bind us to God. And that if you're not religious, if you're secular, then you're not going to be tied to everybody else that's being tied together to God.
Yeah, well, Bill Gates has done a lot of good with his polio vaccine.
Right, but that doesn't support his thesis, so he's not going to use that.
I mean,
and just because he's invented a cure for polio doesn't mean that he knows how to use it.
Those are
properly.
Those are the existential questions. Those are the existential questions concerned with this life.
Yeah,
not
right.
The questions that are concerned with the next.
Right.
What about celestial polio or terrestrial polio? He can't.
Hey, maybe that's what he's talking about. Existential crises are people that want to save the world, want to end, hunger in Africa. They have an existential crisis about this. Stop worrying about that. Get your ass back in church.
Right.
Do genealogy.
Right. Do genealogy and go to the temple as opposed to going to a soup kitchen or some sort of.
Or taking a trip to Africa to disperse mosquito nets. But
what's better?
So terrible.
Feeding someone who's hungry, or saving someone from spirit prison and opening up the gates and allowing them to enter into paradise. What's more important, Jake? Feeding somebody for one meal when their soul is still lost?
When religious people talk about irreligious people, and especially when they talk about atheists, they talk about them with this disdain, it's this very neener. Oh, you're a fundamentalist. You're a religion. You're an ideology. You're dogmatic. But for some reason, atheism is the only religion in their mind that is totally undeserving of any respect whatsoever.
It's Satanism.
What is respect anyway? What does that word even mean?
It's whatever. Let's finish this piece of shit off.
Respect is as worthless as telestial. Did I ever tell you guys about 1 Corinthians 15?
Jesus.
They had something on The Simpsons about it.
Right.
No.
The infant coach. John Hamer, what do you say?
No.
Stop it.
John Hamer says no.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm
gonna get them
my
all.
catchphrase.
Stop it. Rather, let's read the next paragraph.
Okay.
No, are we skipping to the end?
Okay, I'm going to read the penultimate paragraph and then...
Let's just skip to the end. Amen. Okay, all right.
All right. Penultimate paragraph. In that spirit, may I conclude with my heartfelt apostolic witness of truths I know regarding the ultimate gift true religion provides us.
Now at least we're talking about true religion as opposed to
exactly,
all
yeah.
of the other religions.
Let me, the
their
leader of
mattresses.
LDS Mormonism, tell you how great LDS Mormonism is.
Yeah.
This is the great unveiling of the magician at the end. He pulls the cloth on the Salt Lake Temple.
I have been focusing on the social, political, and cultural contributions that religion has provided us for centuries. But I testify that true religion, the gospel of Jesus Christ, gives us infinitely more than that. It gives us peace in this world and eternal life in the world to come, as the scripture phrases it. True religion brings understanding of and loyalty to our Father in heaven and his uncompromised love for every one of his spirit children, past, present, and future. True religion.
Every one of his uncompromised love for his spirit children, past, present, and future.
Well, as long as they're part of the true religion.
You know, one of the things that we skipped over that is worth noting when he's citing all of these great people who have contributed because of their religion to society, he cites Martin Luther King Jr. as somebody whose religion helped him bring equal rights to the U.S.
You know who was a big fan of Martin Luther King Jr.?
Ezra
Hitler.
Benson.
Hitler.
Harold B. Lee.
Yeah.
Hitler. Yeah.
Hitler.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so like, 60 years ago, for an apostle of Jesus Christ to stand up and applaud Martin Luther King Jr. for equal rights? I mean, does that mean in 60 years somebody's going to say the same thing about a gay activist?
Like Harvey Milk?
Yeah, Harvey Milk, right. Mormon Harvey Milk, yeah. I mean,
No, they're not going to say that.
Yeah, right. So it's just so disingenuous. Anyway, I'm sorry, Jake. Go ahead.
True religion engenders in us faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and hope in his resurrection. It encourages love, forbearance, and forgiveness, just as the forgiveness and forbearance I've shown to irreligious people.
Right. And exactly like President Oak said, we do not apologize, nor do we seek an apology. I mean, that's close to forgiveness, right?
Right. That's right in the same ballpark.
Right. Solid ballpark.
True religion, the tie that binds us to God and each other, not only seals our family relationships in eternity, but also heightens our delight in those family experiences while in mortality. Well beyond all the civic, social, and cultural gifts religion gives us is the mercy of a loving Father and Son who conceived and carried out the atoning mission of that Son, Lord Jesus Christ, suturing up that which was torn, bonding together that which
is this guy? Is this
suturing up that which was torn?
Is this the
ligatures?
The physician apostle?
No. We've already talked about.
He keeps on talking about ligatures as if ligatures are not a typesetting thing, and instead it's like a surgery thing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, all this surgery analogy. Anyway.
He's all
tying
about
and binding
metaphors,
together.
and he's, look at me, I'm using
suturing. Okay. All right.
But
that's what makes it profound. It's profound because of its poetic style, not because of its substance.
Oh man.
But the thing is, I'm glad that he finally turned the corner and admitted that when he was saying religion this whole time, he's been talking about true religion, which is Mormonism.
No, that's not what he said. He said what he's been talking about this whole time is he's been focusing on the social, political, and cultural contributions that religion in general has provided us for centuries.
Right.
But
all the counterfeit religions.
But now I'm going to talk about true religion. Now I'm going to bear my testimony.
He has been talking about true religion. I mean,
but he didn't just admit that. He did not just admit that.
But it's clear, when he starts off with breaking down the etymology or the core of the word religion, and then at the end he talks about true religion. He's been referencing true religion the whole time. I mean, it's been clear in the way that he said, churches, if I may, and stuff like that. It's been clear that he's been talking about Mormonism this whole time.
I agree with you that he has, but if you're suggesting that he's admitting it right here, I don't agree with that.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Jeez, make a finer point.
All right, Glenn, finish this off.
I just watched that Curb Your Enthusiasm episode with the masseur that asks, "Do you want me to finish you off?" I think you mean something different, right?
I don't know. I mean, if you can figure
Jake's
it out.
interested.
So you want to have a happy ending.
Happy ending.
Happy ending.
Yeah.
Happy ending to this.
And this has already been so lame at the ending. Anyway, go ahead.
Did you really finish that paragraph? Where am I?
Because my faith, my family, my beliefs.
Okay, because my faith, my family, my beliefs, my covenants, in short, my religion means everything to me. I thank my Father in heaven for it and pray for the continued privilege, there you go, Jake, to speak of it so long as I shall live. May we think upon the religious heritage that has been handed down to us at an incalculable price in many instances, and in so remembering, not only cherish that heritage more fervently, but live the religious principles we say we want to preserve. Yeah, that would be a good thing. I think I would respect him more if he actually did live the religious principles that he says he wants to preserve. Only in the living of our religion will the preservation of it have true meaning. It is in that spirit that we seek the good of our fellow straight men and women and work toward the earthly kingdom of God rolling forth, that the heavenly kingdom of God may come. May our religious...
Happy
ending! May our religious privileges be cherished, preserved, and lived, binding us to just belabor the metaphor one final time to God and each other. That blessed millennial day comes. It's a double orgasm at the end. I earnestly pray in the name of Jesus Cristo. Amen.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a happy ending with some bondage in there.
Yeah, binding.
Bind me up, baby.
That was exhausting. I was totally excited for this one, and then I felt like Slogfest. Man. Holland, dude. Jeez.
But the thing is, I think that this deserved... I mean, it has been kind of excruciating. I agree. But
we had to talk about it. I mean, at the end of the day, all these different things that he's saying, so the religious heritage that has been handed down to us at an incalculable price in many instances. In other words, all of these things. Guess in any case where anybody's religion has been able to be, let's say, held at an incalculable price. Guess who the people on the other side of the incalculable price were? They were people who are religious. So it's not like that this whole dichotomy that he's setting up has any meaning at all. It's just totally.
It was the
stupid.
Secularists that started the crusade.
We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turned. Can we do our own version of this? We didn't start the fire, and have Lehi Nephi,
Mahan Ray
Mori Anchor, yeah. And
we didn't start the fire.
It was always burning since the world would turn. We didn't start the ligature. It was always binding since the world was blinding. I don't know.
Yeah, we thought Paul Simon was hard to record.
Yeah.
Try doing this at the pace.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why this was important is because this is such a part of the political landscape. The religious right claiming that the founding fathers created a document written basically by the hand of God through their religious inspiration, and then you also have the whole you got the transgender bathrooms, and if we can't be bigots to the whole LGBT community, you're oppressing our religious freedom, and it's not like something small. I mean, laws have been passed in North Carolina, Indiana, Louisiana to try to.
It's basically following Jake wherever Jake goes.
They're trying to
impose any state that Jake has ever lived in has a problem. Right, Jake? Did you hear what I said?
It's pretty much me. I think I
think it's you.
Bigotry in my
every
way.
State you have lived in. It's
right.
There's a common thread.
Right.
Binding this all together.
And he's just throwing his voice into the into this crowd, onto this team.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. It's just, and I agree with you, Glenn.
What's the
thing
name
that's
of
so
this
depressing.
authority?
What was that, Jake? Who you know? Remember the Gungan chief from that
Right.
that Phantom Menace that like that is Holland.
That's
Holland. Anyway, what were you saying?
Well, I was going to say the thing that's so depressing about this is the pictures when you go to articles about this particular address, there are images of him speaking at BYU, and there's just thousands of people in the stands, and they're coming out empowered by this, just feeling like there are Rottweilers on the other side of this fence, and I'm gonna put up more boards.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do everything I can to keep that fence up.
Retrenchment. So questions about what is the future of the Mormon Church? Are they going to become really more liberal and accepting and big tent, or are they going to retrench? This suggests retrenchment.
Yeah, and how charitable are the people that listen to this? How charitable are they going to be to their loved ones and friends who they find out left the church and are now secular? Yeah.
Right.
Not like the church lady.
More like secular.
Yeah.
Like that rabbi said.
All right.
I'll tell you one thing. Holland is a world-class athlete in logic.
Oh, I thought you were going to say asshole.
Could cut me off before I even could say my line. Never mind.
I got you. A world-class athlete in logical fallacies.
The spirit voice of goodness whispers to our hearts a better choice than evil's anguish cries. Loud may the sound of hope ring all that departs, and we are bound to him by the time.
For listening to Infants on Thrones.